Hello and welcome to the EcoCast by Actual Tech Media. Today's topic, securing cloud environments. Thank you so much for joining us. On the event today, you'll hear from experts at Rubrik, Firemon, Gigamon, Sneak, Duo, CrowdStrike, and Metallic. Before we get started, there's just a few things that you should know about the event. And I'm going to go through the normal housekeeping information here very quickly because we've got an excellent interview here coming up with a big-time security expert on the hottest topic in the world today. So before we get to that, you should know that we've got some awesome prizes. I'll talk about those here in just a moment. We encourage your technical questions. We have a best question prize. I'll talk about that in a moment as well. I also have some questions for you during the event in the form of poll questions, and we want your feedback on those. We encourage you to socialize the event on Twitter. You can do that right there from your audience console. And I encourage you to check out the handouts that are available for download there in your audience console on the handouts tab. There's ebooks, solution briefs, trial links, and more. The prizes on the event today are 3 Amazon $500 gift cards. You must be live in attendance to qualify. I'll be announcing the prize winners during the event. We also have our best question prizes for Amazon $50 gift cards after each of today's expert presentations. Of course, you have to ask a question, and all prize winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions that you can find there in the handouts tab. And of course, you always have the option to make a donation to the selected charities you see here on the screen. We encourage you to do that, and we would love to help you in that generous act. You can socialize the event using the Twitter icon on your screen, and the hashtag for today, ATM EcoCast, will be automatically appended. You can follow Actual Tech Media and me, your moderator, David M. Davis, as well on Twitter. We'll also be joined by Mr. Scott Becker here later in the event to help us in today's event moderation. Subscribe to all the Actual Tech Media social channels, YouTube, Facebook, and the 10 on Tech podcast, and of course, over on LinkedIn. You should also know that we encourage you to refer your IT friends and coworkers to the Actual Tech Media online event series, and you both could win an Amazon $300 gift card. Those drawings are held monthly. You can do that right there in the handouts tab, and you'll be automatically redirected to participate in that at the end of the event. We promise not to spam your IT friends and coworkers. We'll just send them an invitation to an upcoming series of events. And with that, I'm excited now to turn things over to my fellow moderator, Mr. Scott Becker, for an interview with a cybersecurity expert about the cloud security implications of the conflict in Ukraine. Scott, take it away.
We wanted to talk a little bit about the worldwide cloud security implications from the largest geopolitical incident going on right now, which is the situation in Ukraine. That situation, of course, became a crisis when Russia launched a full-scale invasion into the country on February 24th. We've got this animation from Wikipedia of the progress of the invasion so far, but there are a lot of important reasons to pay attention to this conflict. It's a humanitarian refugee crisis. There's uncertainty about ways that aggressive economic sanctions might affect the global economy. It's contributed to a spike in oil prices. It has the possibility of metastasizing into a larger European war or even sparking a global conflict. And then anytime the United States and Russia are facing off in any way, there's a possibility that nuclear weapons could be used. But for this discussion, we're focusing on a relatively narrow question that's particularly important for those of us involved in securing IT networks and cloud infrastructure. And that question is, what kind of cyber weapons are being used, and what, if anything, can we do to try to prevent them from spilling over into our businesses? So there's no one better to talk about those questions than Ian Thornton-Trump, a CISO at threat intelligence security company Cyjax, and a regular speaker at international IT security conferences. Additionally, he's just had an article published in the peer-reviewed EDPACS journal called Russia, the Cyber Global Protagonist. Ian, thanks for joining us.
I'm just absolutely delighted to be here.
Well, Ian, IT professionals have been tracking the Russia-Ukraine conflict pretty warily since 2013 because of that cyber weapons spillover issue. And I wonder if you could talk briefly about just some of the worst examples already of cyber weapons spilling out and causing global problems from this conflict, in the last, 10 years or so.
Yeah, that's a really good, accurate assessment. So that, obviously we had NotPetya, which grabbed headlines from originally launched via using what is believed to be NSA malware that was then weaponized by Russia. A supply chain attack where a accounting server where you download software from contained that malware as well. It has been described as one of the most impactful cyber attacks that we've ever seen. From there, we go into a really interesting scenario where Russian forces work directly with cyber assets, and we've seen this in other attacks. Especially against the national critical infrastructure of the Ukraine, turning the power out, destabilizing the Ukrainian networks, and of course, controlling the information that the Ukrainian government would like you to receive, and making sure that that became inaccessible. This is all textbook Russian playbook going back to their invasion of Georgia.
So that's a pretty hair-raising history that you've gone through there. Since this became a hot war on February 24th, what have we seen in terms of new cyber weapon deployments, that are reaching outside Ukrainian borders?
Yeah, it's been interesting because it's been somewhat constrained. We didn't see the giant global cyber attack, which I think many vendors wanted us to see. However, every single agency issued a warning that I think because we saw, the kinetic war happening, the links between, geopolitics and cyber are well known. So I think the fear was justified, and the messages of shore up your defenses really were well heard. Which is remarkable in itself. Now, from the cyber attack side, we certainly saw Russian wiper malware deployed. However, what was interesting is because Ukraine had been, I think, very close to the EU and access to Western cyber defense capabilities, these strains of malware, whether or not it was Russian or Belarus, is still an argument that's being had in the community, got picked up by Sentinel-1 and Microsoft really fast. Like we're talking about hours before protection was put into the field from detection, which is amazing. Now, there are still all sorts of simple attacks that are happening right now, like denial of service attacks globally, both on the USSR. The activist group Anonymous has been actively engaging in both Belarus and Russia with cyber attacks of their own. This is all part of what a lot of people are calling the information war that is going on, because it's not just about malware that could come through the pipe at us. It is about disinformation and all of the fear and uncertainty and doubt that goes along with essentially what is a complete war zone.
And what about on the ransomware side? I understand there's been some mixed effects there. I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, certainly there was a group that sort of seemed to vault into this with the idea that they were out to make some money. Lapis is what there's called. They breached NVIDIA. They breached Samsung. And it's interesting because they don't appear to have an affiliated state actor and are sort of conducting themselves like cowboys and focusing on the demanding all sorts of outrageous demands from NVIDIA, including asking them to turn all of their intellectual property into open source, and attributing that request because essentially NVIDIA announced that in their next series of GTX video cards, they would be degrading the capabilities of those video cards for Bitcoin mining. So obviously, this doesn't seem to be a motivation normally attributed to a state actor in terms of how they conduct themselves in the course of a cyber attack. To be fair, I think Russia right now is looking at their home front That's causing a great deal of problems. So initially, when you had the invasion start, I don't think Russia was expecting the level of backlash in both sanctions and cyber attacks from activist groups and from the Ukrainians themselves. Like the defense that's going on the ground, the Ukraine is certainly hitting back on the cyber level as well.
Is there anything that you think that IT security pros should be watching out for over the next few weeks as this conflict develops?
Absolutely. As the conflict, and let's be fair right now, I think we're in, the early opening stages of the second act of a 3-act play. So, one of the cautious things is, prepare for everything, but hope for nothing. And I think, that's a reality. Make backups that are then offline, that, are stored in a safe location. We're almost back to the days of taking your backup tapes home at night. But getting that level of safety and assurance to look at your resiliency and your backup recovery, add a new domain controller, let it synchronize, shut it down, wait a couple of days, bring up that domain controller again, let it synchronize, so that you have the best chance if you get, what people fear, which is another wormable type of attack that rapidly infects globally. I don't think that because of all the rhetoric that NATO has put out, talking about Article 5 being invoked for a significant cyber attack, and they've deliberately left what significant means vague. I don't think that the Russians would be foolhardy, but this really depends on whether or not the Russians feel that they need a major breakthrough in order to get to the table of negotiations. And unfortunately, the current conflict is showing what Russia does best is, as soon as they run into any sort of spirited resistance, they roll back and they use their artillery to turn it into rubble. This is very similar to what we saw in Chechnya, very similar to what we saw in Syria, and especially the city of Homs.
The other thing that I wanted to ask is there anything that IT pros can do right now to protect their organizations as best they can?
Definitely adopt that multi-factor authentication to protect your IDAM, your identity and access management. That's absolutely critical. That's something that should be being done, even prior to the conflict. We always talk about what are the best practices. I think what we're seeing is pay attention to CISA and what the exploited vulnerabilities are that they publish. I think it's almost being published on a weekly basis now of those detected exploited abilities, and be aware that if you're seeing those exploited vulnerabilities, being made aware of them, and they are present within your infrastructure, that is absolutely a great way to become intelligence driven in terms of your vulnerability management. I know many IT shops need to know what they need to focus on right now, because I think focus is one of the most difficult things, especially with all the noise and the rhetoric and the constant CNN bumpers of the war in Ukraine. And so really focus on your job, be available to people, understand that everybody's going to be stressed about it as well. So now's not the time to, be a jerk.
Well, Ian, this has been informative, sobering, sometimes hopeful, sometimes scary, but appreciate you coming on and giving us your perspective on what's going on.
Thank you so much.
All right, excellent interview with Scott and Ian. Really appreciate that. I've just brought up our first of 2 polls. The first poll on the screen is related to the interview there with Ian. How concerned are you about cyber weapon spillover and increased cyber attacks from the conflict in Ukraine? And I'm going to share the results of this poll here in just a moment, and you can kind of see how you stack up with your peers who are on the EcoCast today. If you haven't answered these polls before, you just do it right there in the slides window. Select the option that corresponds to you, and your IT organization. And in just a moment here, looks like we've got a good representation from the audience already. I'm going to share the results. And it looks like 29% said they're on high alert, 26% somewhat concerned, 36% said we're keeping an eye on it. So the vast majority of the audience, 94% I estimate, is either keeping an eye on it all the way up to high alert. So thank you for sharing your feedback on that poll. And then last poll before I introduce you to our first presenter, and that is simply, what's your time frame when it comes to adding new or updating your existing security solutions at your company to take some sort of action to better protect yourself, to better monitor your security posture, to prevent attacks hopefully before they happen, or to recover from attacks rapidly if they do? Is it 0 to 6 months? So in the next 6 months, 6 to 12 months, so in the next year, 12 to 24, or not quite sure? All right. Thank you to everyone who responded to the poll there on the screen. We appreciate your feedback. We'll have polls after each one of our presentations on the event today. And of course, all the presenters want to get your feedback and your thoughts. So we appreciate that. All right. And with that, I'm excited now to welcome our first presenter on today's EcoCast. I'm excited to bring in Tracy Ator, Inside Sales Engineer at Rubrik. Tracy, take it away.
Hey everyone. So thank you for having me again. My name is Tracy Ator and I am an inside sales engineer here at Rubrik. I am here today to talk about how Rubrik can help accelerate your cloud journey when it comes to archiving to the cloud, M365, and of course, backup and recovery of existing cloud workloads, whether in AWS, Azure, or GCP. Here are some of the objectives I'm going to talk through in regards to some of the key challenges you may face with data protection in the cloud. Then we will talk about how Rubrik can step in and help. And I'll be more than happy to do that at the end here by providing you guys with a brief tour of our Polaris platform, where we make all of this possible from a single pane of glass. Before we go into our cloud story, though, I do want to do a brief level set on Rubrik and the core value proposition of our platform. This might be or might serve as a reminder for some of you if you are already familiar with what we do. But no, the way that, where it all begins, first, we modernize the way that traditional legacy backup is done through our single scale out software fabric approach, which is then built on a 2U 4-node hyper-converged appliance, drastically consolidating and simplifying the way that core backups is done. We support all enterprise apps for this workflow with an API-first platform that is secure and flexible to automate, and it's all driven by SLAs. Out of the box, it's natively immutable through our append-only Atlas file system, where all writes are done out of place, so no new data written ever touches existing data. But most importantly, the backups are not accessible through any standard network protocols like NFS or SMB. Second, what we will be mostly talking about today is that our platform natively extends to the cloud. Our software was designed in the cloud era with cloud in mind, where we could dynamically move data to the cloud, spin things up in the cloud, take a VM and archive it to the cloud, and protect cloud native assets. Last but not least, where we're going and our vision as a company is to deliver additional business value beyond just the core backup layer. We can provide additional insights with use cases like cyber resiliency and data governance by making use of the backup metadata we ingest. So think monitoring snapshots for any anomalous changes, or finding out exactly where sensitive data like credit cards or social security numbers might be out in the open, and suit threat hunting capabilities, which is really exciting. So our customers can use that to scan existing snapshots for indicators of compromise to help signal when an infection likely started in the first place. And that is the core platform in general. But let's jump back into why we're here, and that is to talk about the cloud and the challenges to managing and protecting that data with Rubrik. So here's the checklist, what we're trying to solve here, 3 things. The first, quite fitting for today, is figuring out how do I solve for the cloud? We do find that enterprises or organizations in general are trying to solve for data management in a hybrid architecture. So that means they're adopting new cloud platforms, even deploying multiple cloud platforms to achieve a lot of different things unique to their organization. Secondly, customers we talk to are trying to make it easier to run their digital estate. Automation is a key tenet to operational efficiency. So when thinking about your next data management solution, it must be easy to obviously automate and integrate into your environment, right? Last but certainly not least is tackling security risk. Data security and being able to recover from ransomware plus data governance are top of mind for everybody. A data management solution would be incomplete if it did not provide recovery capabilities for cyber attacks and region failures. Another problem that comes into play has to do with the shared responsibility model, where one part of the setup is the responsibility of the cloud provider, and another part of it is the responsibility of the customer. But no matter what, when it comes to security, it's always going to fall into the lap of the customer. And because of that, they're seeking out a well-architected cloud solution. And because of that, it can become especially tricky if you're hybrid, multi-cloud, or operating at an enormous scale, whether it's infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, applications, you name it. And here's the main challenge for those with existing workloads in the cloud. A typical cloud architecture often involves tens to hundreds of different accounts, subscriptions across many different cloud regions, which combined with manual job scheduling or painful scripting, it could really drain productivity from IT teams. In the field, we're hearing from some of our prospects that they're having to set up all these different components around things like retention and frequency, then having to deploy resources within multiple regions for each account, where now you have to manage backup schemes across all these different regions now. Then here is where Rubrik comes in slide form, because I will show you guys again through a little brief demo how it works, but we could help you solve this and ensure that your data is backed up and protected wherever it sits in the cloud. Our platform can tie in regardless of where your organization is in its cloud journey, whether you're 90% on-prem and have a deadline to be in the cloud in the next 12 months, or you're born in the cloud and building all your apps in there and you want to know how you apply security and governance. So, obviously all our customers are on that journey, and thus far, this is what we've helped them solve here at Rubrik. So we make it easy to archive backup data to low-cost long-term storage to the cloud, help orchestrate their existing applications into the cloud to accelerate their move away from on-prem infrastructure, and to ensure their new cloud-native apps are protected. So what does that mean? First up, let's talk archival. Most customers, if they have an on-prem data center, and have replaced their legacy solution with Rubrik, they will take it, an archive of their backup data and send it to a public cloud, maybe an AWS S3 bucket or an Azure blob. Our technology does incremental forever in the archive, so it is efficient with how we're placing the data in the cloud bucket. We could also automate that life cycle of how the data tiers and when it tiers based on policies and storage class. This is all controlled within an SLA domain to dictate when and where you want data archived, because again, all the metadata is indexed, it's searchable, and if you need to go pull data out of that archive with our software, you can retrieve single files without having to pull the whole VM back. So if you had an archive living in an S3 infrequent access bucket, but maybe there's a document you've been asked to pull from 3 months ago, it's no longer in production, it's in backup, you'll be able to pull that one file back. Or let's say you want to set up an SLA policy that says you want to take a snapshot every 6 hours. You want to keep that data local on the appliance for 30 days, but then you also have a retention requirement of 2 years. You could then set up that SLA policy to reflect this. So data after it's been retained locally for 30 days then gets pushed to the least expensive tier in the cloud, like an Azure cold storage or something like that, or even archive tier. And then let's see, going beyond that, next up, cloud instantiation. This is a feature of ours called Cloud On. It's currently only available in AWS and Azure right now, but customers who are protecting their on-prem workloads using Rubrik usually implement this for things like disaster recovery, app migration, or an accelerated like test or test dev environment from their existing snapshots on the appliance. But technically speaking, what this does, it supports converting an on-prem VM to an EC2 instance in AWS or a VM in Azure, irrespective of whether it is a snapshot available locally on the appliance or if it has already been archived to AWS or Azure. It does this by converting the actual VMDK to an AMI if we're talking AWS, or a VHD in Azure. Sorry, I should have mentioned that beforehand. From which that instance is then launched in the cloud. Then last up is cloud native protection. This is delivered as software as a service based. It's a software as a service based snapshotting tool. I'm sorry, available through Polaris. What this software is used for is to protect workloads that are infrastructure as a service, platform as a service in the cloud. Because some customers, after they've lifted and shifted, or if they've built, things cloud native, they want to make sure that they can provide the same level of governance and security up there. So yeah, and then this is something I'm actually going to talk through in a short demo. And then lastly, I do want to show that we cover and protect a broad range of workloads. The most popular being EC2 instances, Azure VMs, VMware Cloud, SQL, and M365, to name a few. We actually announced back in August of last year that we teamed up with Microsoft, and that was to co-engineer some projects with them, which in fact included backing up and protecting M365. That's, Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams data, all delivered as software as a service, and the backups are hosted inside our own Azure tenant, providing customers with that logical air gap and the operational freedom that comes with Rubrik managing that setup end to end. And so without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. And then I'm going to jump into Polaris so I could show you how this kind of all works. All right, so I'll just jump back into that screen share here. Here it is, and share. All right, and I hope I'm sharing the right screen. But no, launching into Polaris here. This is that SaaS-based offering I mentioned several times that allows you to manage everything Rubrik from a cloud-native perspective. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on inventory, and you can see all of my cards that I have set up here. So I already talked about how we do protect, on-prem workloads, whether that's VMware, Hyper-V, things like that. But all of the cloud stuff will also be here as well. So I got my M365 card. We could see that I am protecting about 691 users out of 780 that are loaded in there from a single subscription. Coming over here, though, we have AWS EC2, where I'm protecting 13 EC2 instances, or sorry, 5 out of 13. AWS, RDS, Azure Virtual Machines. I got GCP here. We support pretty much all major cloud providers by simply tapping into their snapshot and storage compute APIs to perform protection operations, to which Rubrik will then orchestrate all of these capabilities. But at the end of the day, we are using APIs provided by your cloud provider of choice. But once that is all set up, Rubrik can take snapshots, set frequency, retention on what you want, replicate across regions. So obviously a number of things we could do to automate protection from a cloud perspective. But to get up and running, it's actually really simple. I have this gear icon here. This is a demo lab. So if I actually try to show you the walkthrough on getting set up, it won't make any sense because like demo lab, but I will talk through it. So once you click on that gear icon, I'll go to my cloud settings. And then from there, you're gonna walk through a prompt that has you choose your cloud provider, what type of protection is needed. Then you're gonna type in the account ID for that particular account that you want to protect. And then also, if you want to mass add hundreds of accounts, we also have Python SDKs available, and you could also do that from a Terraform perspective as well. So once we have that all dialed in, I'll just go into this AWS EC2 card to show you a better example here. So yeah, once all your workloads are loaded in here, you can see I have a bunch of different EC2 instances. I could then go ahead and select, maybe all of them, maybe just a few. I'll just select these first three, and this is how we start protecting them. So I'll go ahead and go to manage protection. Right out of the box, I do have a couple of SLA domains to choose from. Most of the time, you're going to be creating your own, though. So I'll go ahead and click create SLA domain. You do want to name it something easy to identify. I'll go down here. I'll say, okay, this is an EC2/EBS instance. I'll click next. And then here is where you set the actual frequencies and retention for, in other words, how often do you want to take snapshots and how long do you want to keep them? So we're pretty flexible here at Rubrik. We could say, hey, take a snapshot every 6 hours. I want to keep that for 7 days. I also need one every day, but I want to keep my dailies for 30 days. So now I'll go to the second side of this SLA policy where we have archiving. And really exciting, soon you'll have this ability to archive if you want those snapshots, sent off or pruned over to an archive location like S3 for cheaper storage. So I'll go ahead and turn that on. I'll select an archival location. Sorry, demo lab, I don't really have much to go off from here, but I think you guys get the point. I could also enable instant archive, although this is not available right now for EC2 EBS object types just yet. Essentially, that would just create a second copy every time it took a snapshot. But down here, this is where you can decide, okay, archive snapshots after 30 days on the managing location. So this is where you define how long you want to retain those snapshots at the archive location. Best practice usually is 30 days. Or I could adjust it using the slider. Maybe I only want it for, 13 days. I'll click next. And then here is where we have replication. You can replicate snapshots in the same account or to another region you could replicate snapshots in the same account to another region or cross account and maintain different retention for those copies. I'll just go ahead and turn that on because this is actually best practice to defend against ransomware. Otherwise, the backup data will stay just within your cloud account. So once you choose that region here, you define it is going to start immediately, and then you define how long you want that replication target to retain those snapshots. Just use a slider. You can also fine tune it using your arrow keys. Forgot to mention that. And then once you click next, I guess I have to choose something here. Let's just do that. Once I choose next, you just go ahead and you have the option to put a description here. You just review it and then you hit create. So once you've created an SLA domain, for instance, let me just exit out of there. These three will take on that SLA domain that I just created. So it's simple as that, getting set up there. And then we could also assign it at the account level. If you use tag rules, which most customers do, maybe an instance is tag backup yes. Then you can make Polaris aware of that via these tag rules. So moving forward, anytime an instance was created with that tag on it within AWS, that SLA that you created protecting instances with that tag will automatically inherit anything tagged under backup yes. And we have all our tag rules listed here. But beyond that, I think I only have about a minute left. I did want to run into M365 real quick, where I'm protecting 691 users. Just so you can see how simple the UI looks here. It's very clean. You can see that the service is online. We do protect Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams. Everything we do is based on an SLA policy. So I could actually assign an SLA domain down to the applications, kind of creating like a blanket policy. Or if you guys had individual users, maybe like executives or VPs that require their own SLA domain to get even more granular with those groups, you could do that as well. So this is what it'll look like once your users are all loaded in. I'll go ahead and type Tracy, pretend I'm a VP for a minute. I have the bronze SLA domain assigned to me. However, if I click my name, manage protection, you're already used to this. You saw me do this over in my EC2 card, but same thing. I got these SLA domains straight out of the box that I could use, the defaults, or I could go ahead and create my own where I define, once again, how often I want to take snapshots and how long I want to keep them. And then when you're ready to restore things like email, maybe an entire mailbox. I'll just use email, for example. I'll take you there. You'll get this calendar view. So once it's time to restore, all these green dots mean I have a successful snapshot waiting for me. I'll click on the 10th. This is what that will look like. I'll click recover, and then you select the items that you want to recover. So once that's loaded, you can see if I select this would be my entire mailbox. I click next. So I can restore that back to the original user, or I can restore it to another user. So maybe, I don't know, someone in the legal department really needs my mailbox. Who knows? I could absolutely send that entire mailbox to another user. And I know we are running out of time, so I'm going to stop here. Should you guys ever need an in-depth demo, feel free to contact me. I'll be more than happy to set that up with you. But for now, this is the sizzle demo, I like to call it. And yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
All right, excellent presentation, really cool demo. Thank you so much, Tracy. I'd love to see the sizzle there. I've just brought up the poll question for everyone out there. We're going to leave this up while we take your questions. The question on the screen that we want to get your feedback on is, what additional information would you like about Rubrik? What's the next step that you'd like to take? And I love this feedback from Arlene out there in the audience, who said, wow, I didn't know that Rubrik offered M365 protection. This is awesome. So let's go ahead and start with the first question on the list, and that is, they're wanting to know, do I need an on-prem appliance to protect my EC2 instances, or just the SaaS?
Yeah, you actually do not. So Polaris is all delivered as software as a service. The only time you would need an appliance is if we're protecting workloads that are on-prem, like VMware, virtual machines, physical Windows or Linux boxes, etc., because that is where we implement radar and sonar as well, which is all delivered as software as a service, which is access, what I just showed you in that demo. But no, for cloud native protection or workloads we're backing up in the cloud, definitely not a requirement. We would just be supplying the Polaris entitlement, and the user would then follow our instructions for getting their registration, account, and secure connection set up in the portal. It's just that easy. Excellent.
Yeah, sounds super easy to do. Another question here, where's the data written and how is it protected for the Microsoft 365 portion?
Yeah, good question. So the data that is being backed up in M365 goes over into what we call our Rubrik hosted tenant. So what that means is that every customer will have their own dedicated resource group, Azure Key Vault, where we will maintain the keys, Azure Kubernetes Service, which is what we use to scale up our compute workloads, and then all of the backups get written to blob storage, specifically into a hot tier blob storage, and then also into an Azure storage account that's also all managed by us. It's all fully encrypted. It's isolated on a day-to-day basis. We call that our logical air gap because by design, our customers wouldn't have access to this storage. It's all just owned and managed by Rubrik from day one. So it's just one less thing to worry about in terms of the security piece.
Very nice. And then what are the recovery options for cloud native applications that you protect with Rubrik?
Yeah, I was actually pressed for time there, so I apologize we didn't get too into it. But the options for recovery are pretty flexible. They'll get file level recovery, so you could download individual files, a group of files or folders from a snapshot. You could restore existing EC2 instances or Azure VMs over the original instance from a clean point-in-time snapshot presented from the calendar view in the UI. Figure you would be using that option, though, should the original instance be corrupted by malware or get in the water, things like that. And then you could also export as another option, which essentially would just create a brand new instance from a point-in-time snapshot, and you could launch that in a region of your choice from your account there.
Okay, got it. Yeah, sounds like it could work very well, very rapidly. Get that cloud native app back up and running. Another question, they want to know, can we enable region replication?
Yeah. So we can enable replication to another region for both AWS and Azure. And for cross accounts or subscription-based replication, that would only be available in AWS at the moment.
Got it. Okay. And then let's see, lots of great questions coming in from the audience. Another question here, folks want to know, if they want to get started with Microsoft 365 protection, what's the easiest way to go about that?
Yeah, so you can visit our website, rubric.com. We definitely have a link there where you could submit a form, and then that will get routed to the appropriate rep on this side of the house, or you could just reach out directly to me at tracy.atour@rubric.com, and I could help get you started as well.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your contact info. And it sounds like, I know Rubric always has a lot of great resources over on the website, labs, and all sorts of other excellent resources. Tracy, I always enjoy your demos. So thank you so much for being on the EcoCast today.
Thank you. See you at the next one. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I encourage everyone out there who hasn't yet answered the poll to respond there. We do want to get your feedback, and I'll just leave it up while I announce our first Amazon $500 gift card. This is going to Blake Monroe from Texas. Congratulations, Blake Monroe from Texas. So we've still got 2 more Amazon $500 gift cards to give out. And of course, don't forget about our best question prizes. We're running for each of our Q&A sessions on the event today. And then why not refer an IT friend or coworker as well? They're in the handouts tab. All right, with that, it's now time to move on to our next presentation on today's EcoCast. Welcome to Tim Woods, Vice President of Technology Alliances at Firemon. Hey, Tim, thanks for being on.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, take it away, Tim, whenever you're ready.
Awesome. All right. Well, guys, thanks, everybody, for being here today as well. I realize you could be doing 1,000 other things with your time today, but you chose to spend your time with us, and for that, we are sincerely appreciative. So, love the topic. There's so much to talk to. I know I'm not going to do it justice in 20 minutes, but hopefully we'll be able to address some of your burning questions and explore some of the challenges. If you're not familiar with Firemon, hopefully you are, but if you're not, we're a leader in the network security policy management arena, but it extends well past what we affectionately like to call NSPM, Network Security Policy Management. It extends into cloud security operations and cybersecurity asset management, situational awareness, helping you to understand what is it that you have that you need to secure, and is it secured appropriately. Sorry there, I clicked on the wrong button and I took myself out of the presentation. I want to start with complexity. I want to start this graph. I like this. I think any conversation around security kind of has to start with complexity because I think it's one of our main adversaries. And it's not the adversary that always jumps to the forethought of our thought process, but it's the one that I think is always there. And if you're not challenging complexity within your environment, within your cloud, not just your cloud environment, it's still on-prem. It's that transport path all the way from the ground to the cloud. And it can gestate in a number of different ways. There's all kinds of variables that contribute to complexity in those many forms. And whether it's applications that are being deployed within your cloud provisioning services outside the purview of IT security, or it's the accumulation of rules for the policies that you're using to help manage some of the enforcement along that, these things can all contribute to unnecessary complexity. And here's the bottom line. If you don't challenge complexity within your environment, if you don't look for where that complexity lies and what you can do to help challenge it within your environment, a couple of things are going to happen. One, the probability of human error is just going to go up, and the probability of misconfiguration is also going to go up, and that's going to result in some undesirable things. And so we have to look for that complexity. We have to help minimize that complexity gap as we apply our security controls within our cloud environment. And it starts with visibility. You have to have visibility within your environment, and it's the number one thing you're gonna see here, that it's listed for us time and time again during our surveys, during our customer engagements, during our investigations. The very first thing that we run into is, I don't feel like that I have a good handle on the necessary visibility that I need to properly employ security within my respective environments. It's not the only thing. Visibility is not the only thing, right? Being able to identify changes as they happen, especially in the cloud environments where things can happen quite quickly, but that gets back into visibility as well, right? Being able to answer those questions when a change happens. Did I expect the change? Did the change have a negative impact on my security posture, my business posture, my compliance posture? Inadequate compatibility between solutions or poor integrations. This will get into an API discussion and how you can raise the total value of your combined security solution. There's a ton of technology heterogeneity as we look at that transport path from the ground to the cloud, and then once we get inside the cloud, both native controls and native cloud services, but then also into your third-party services as well. And then if you've ever heard me speak before, if you've ever been on one of my other webinars, you've heard me say this before, and I'm going to say it here. It doesn't matter how good the technology is. It doesn't matter if it's the best widget on the planet. If you can't manage it effectively and it doesn't scale to the size of the environment, then you're not going to recognize the return on the security investment that you're looking for, and you're not going to see the adoption that you hope for as well. And of course, as we know, the perimeter, as we once knew it, has extended well beyond those traditional boundaries, and so too has the attack surface, right? And the bad actors are not leaving anybody out. I mean, they're attacking at all levels, IT, OT, you name it. Everyone is under attack, and so we have to take that into consideration. But those are definitely the challenges that we see. I put together just some bullets here in a little graphic, and these are just the ones that I came up with off the top of my head, but I think you could probably add to this as well. But I wanted to list some of the areas where we see an impact whenever we have visibility challenges. And of course, I talked about change earlier, compliance, deployment, hygiene. When hygiene goes out the window, when policy hygiene, when we fail to properly manage the security policies on our enforcement technologies that we have within our respective cloud provisioning environments or within our data centers, then there's all kinds of bad things that are going to happen. Of course, we talked about complexity and the probability of risk and misconfiguration, the human error going up as well. So all of those things. So I wanted to give you just a practical example here. This is our enterprise dashboard, and I know it's just a snapshot. If I can show you a real-time demonstration, that would be a lot better. Picture paints 1,000 words. Demonstration paints 1,000,000 words. But being able to scroll down there and see the other pieces of information, a lot of information there, but being able to get a holistic view across your entire hybrid infrastructure at a glance to see kind of where am I doing good, where am I doing bad, where should I be focusing some of my remediation efforts to have a positive impact on my security posture. Having that glance is just invaluable, and that's what we're trying to do here. We have a number of different dashboards within our platform, within our network security policy management platform, but this is one of the key dashboards here that can help you at a glance understand exactly where you are at a given point in time as it relates to your security posture, compliance posture. Realities of managing cloud security complexity. We talked about that. You have to challenge complexity. Of course, things are moving quicker now too, right? The speed of the business has accelerated, and many times it's accelerated past our ability to consistently honor some of the business requests that are coming in, or to effectively secure some of those things that are being deployed within the environment that we have responsibility for. And so, of course, we know if security becomes a roadblock, if we're a stop sign, then what does the business try to do? The business is going to go around you, right? And that's the last thing that we want to happen, because we know that security gaps are created once that starts occurring, especially when that starts occurring too frequently. And then again, compliance. And again, whether you're mandated by a regulatory compliance initiative or not, you're still going to have your own best practices. So you may be using NIST or FSMA or PCI if you're in retail, whatever it happens to be. Being able to maintain that compliance continuously so that it's not a fire drill every time an audit comes up is important too, and that's part of the importance of managing our cloud environment. So I'm going to give you some guiding principles here that you can apply pretty much across the board, with securing your cloud environment, any environment is for that matter. But if you can't see it, it's back to visibility again. If you can't see it, it's very hard to secure it. It's very hard to secure the unknown. And if you can't secure it, you definitely can't trust it. And so I know these things sound kind of makes sense, very common sense, but sometimes we lose sight of this. You have to have it. All starts with visibility, it ends with visibility. You have to be able to see it. I have to make sure that whether that data has the right security controls attached to it, that individual, that device, whatever it happens to be, that resource, that application, those services have the right security controls attached to them, and that they're being properly enforced continuously. So as we get into the cloud, of course, the networks are abound. There's transit gateways and internet gateways and direct connect gateways, and there's workloads, there's applications, there's services, there's resources, there's the devices that are connecting in from the individuals, there's the data that has to be encrypted, and of course the people. We have to make sure that the people that are coming in are who we expect, and they are who they say they are. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But it starts with knowing that environment, right? If you're going to be able to secure your environment, you have to know what is in that environment. And it starts from the bottom and works its way up, or it starts from the ground and works its way up into the cloud provisioning. But all along that transport path, all along that path to cloud, there's all that technology heterogeneity, but there are a ton of security enforcement policies, whether it's in the SD-WAN, there's security policies in the next generation SD-WANs that are usually connecting into that SASE environment, or maybe you're not using SASE, you're going directly into your cloud provisioning, and then you've got native cloud services and third-party cloud services, but there's all of these enforcement technologies. But if you don't manage those, and it's not easy putting your arms around all of those policies and making sure that you clearly understand what policy behavior looks like across all of those policies. And that's why it's important to bring them into a single lens, homogenize those policies so you can look at them and get that single source of truth against those policies and manage them effectively. But it starts with discovering what it is that you have out there, what is it that I can leverage within my environment, what is it that I have to protect. So you have to be able to eliminate that. Establishing zones of control, whether you're segmenting, whether you're micro-segmenting, whether you're trying to apply a zero-trust network architecture, you can use those policies to help you. You know, that zone may be a single workstation. That zone of control may be a single application or a resource, or it may be a cluster of those. But being able to understand who has access from which zone to which zone, and what are the enforcement policies that are helping me to ensure that I have the right data controls, the right data security controls in place, and that they're doing that the behavior of those security controls are exactly what I expect them to be. Being able to have a visual of that and making sure that they are continuously monitored, so that if anybody does do something that impacts a security control or impacts zone-to-zone communication, that I'm aware of that, and that I can react to that very quickly. One of the things that we have, again, another practical example, is we give you a picture of what your zone compliance matrix looks like and where are the policies that are helping you to enforce that compliance matrix, and then everything is click into to get to the underlying data that you can control. Having again, a holistic view of your compliance dashboard, again, whether it's regulatory or not, could just be your best practice. But having that holistic view to immediately determine where I have my control failures is very important. Understanding what your security concern index looks like. In other words, how many path controls do I have versus how many failed controls do I have, and where do those failed controls exist? Being able to attach that metadata to the actual rules within the policies for my enforcement point technologies, and being able to see. Now, this is a little bit of an eye strain. I recognize that as you're looking at this picture, but this is an actual screenshot. And I'm just going to draw you. This is a rule, and then if you were to look here, you see this little red here. That red actually says 15. That's 15 critical control failures on this particular rule, enforcement rule. I could click on that, and it's going to take me to the underlying data beneath that to tell me exactly what those critical control failures are, and give me the actionable intelligence that I need in order to build a remediation around it as well. So it's just that simple to surface some of that information that you need to be able to make an effective change, positive change to your security posture. Obviously, authentication and authorization, identity access management is paramount in cloud security. I'm not going to stand on this very long. I just want to make sure that you understand that I recognize the importance of that. You've got to make sure that the person that is connecting is who they say they are. You've got to make sure that that device is compliant, that it has the necessary precautions on it as well, and that you're only going to give them access to what it is that they need to have access to. Just because you let them into the building doesn't mean that they have free run of the building. I come from a naval security background and worked at the Pentagon for a while. And while I was allowed into the Pentagon, my access to the areas was definitely limited. So there was the zones of controls were quite evident, because there's usually some young man holding an M16 that told you couldn't go where it was from a physical perspective. But least privilege principle kind of plays right into this. So meaning that I only want to grant access on a need-to-know basis. You know, again, in my days, even though we had top secret security clearances and stuff, we still were only given access on a need-to-know basis. And so that's really what when you're looking at your policies, you want to make sure that those policies are only, they're giving access based on what access the individual needs to that resource in order to achieve the goal of their job. And what happens is this concept of least privilege principle goes out the window when hygiene goes out the window. And so if we're not properly managing our security policies, and we have these overly permissive rules throughout our policies, then all of these different security policies, enforcement points that we talked about within our hybrid expanse, you know, it's very difficult to make sure that our controls are going to be effective. And so we have to be able to get our arms around those and have good visibility into policy behavior in order to make sure that we don't have an abundance of overly permissive rules. Another practical example here, we have a discovery analysis component in our dashboard, a complexity discovery, and what we're looking for here is we're looking for a way to surface those overly permissive rules, those rules that are allowing way more access than what is necessary to meet the needs of the business. And so we want to be able to surface those so that we can remediate those as quickly as possible. Orchestration and automation. If you haven't looked into cloud security, a cloud security operations platform, I know there's a lot of technology embedded within the cloud today. There's AWS Security Hub, but those security events and those security alerts can come from so many different places. And being able to put those in the hands of the right person at the right time so that they can make an actionable change that has a positive impact on your security posture is critically important. And so having a way to automate that, to make sure that you're focused on the events that you need to make sure that you're focused on the alerts as they come in, that could be that could have a negative impact on your posture if you didn't correct it. Finding those in a timely manner and responding to those in a timely manner is critical. Again, it starts with visibility. As you're developing that security operations plan, that cloud security plan, having that real-time monitoring, being able to determine when a threat takes place or a misconfiguration takes place, and then being able to automatically react to that issue, putting it in the hands of the people that can react to that and take the appropriate action. Give them the action as well, whether that's giving them the solution just by a click. Maybe it's changing a configuration on an S3 bucket because it wasn't encrypted. Maybe it, whatever it happens to be, but putting that information in their hands so that they can react to it in a timely manner is very important. There's so many benefits to automation, but you have to look where you have inconsistencies in your processes. Where are my inconsistencies? Where are my processes falling short? Whether it's my change process, a change goes in and it was vetted, and all of a sudden, but the change results in an impact to the business or an impact to the services that we're trying to provide, or it exposes something that it wasn't supposed to. What can I do to make my change process more consistent? Or maybe it's my provisioning process, or maybe it's my modification process. Whatever that process happens to be, find that process and identify where greater efficiency and consistency in the changes can have a positive impact. And so being able to eliminate those costly misconfigurations, reducing costs, extending greater confidence to the business in your ability to react to their business needs so that they don't try to go around you, making sure that compliance is continuous and I'm not getting into a fire drill every time that there's an audit, and making sure that I'm meeting my service level agreements for my business. So many benefits to automation, but first, don't try to boil the ocean. We're not trying to boil the ocean when we start looking, when we start talking about automation. Look for areas that you can have marked improvements in, that you can measure against and make sure that you have positive impact. All right, so I'm at the end of my time already. That went quick, so I wanted to leave just a couple of minutes for questions. Again, Firemon, we extend in all these areas. We help you gain greater visibility, not just on-prem, but in the cloud, across that transport to the cloud, and of course, integration into those other security platforms that you have within your environment. We recognize we're not the center of the universe, but we want to be able to raise the total value of your combined security solutions to get the return on the security investments that you're looking for. So with that, I'll go ahead and open it up for questions here.
Absolutely. Yeah, we do have some questions. Yeah. Coming in for you. While we take those questions, Tim, I'm just going to bring up a poll for everyone out there in the audience. We want to get everyone's feedback on this poll. The question on the screen is, what additional information would you like about the Firemon solution? And I'm sorry, Tim, go ahead. Was there a question you want to talk about?
No, I'm ready to go.
Okay. All right. I was first going to ask you about this one. Does Firemon provide API support for the platform?
That's a great question. That was a whole, I thought about that in the presentation too. It's a whole nother area of discussion. API is kind of the language of love for cloud nowadays. It's communication to communication, application to application, business to business, everything. APIs are used, and securing those APIs are critically important. But yes, the answer to the question is Firemon is an API-first company. We have a very robust set of APIs. It's one of the things that makes integration with other technologies out there and integrating other technologies into our platform a breeze because of our commitment to a very robust and a very strong and very secure API.
Very nice. I like that integration. Another question here, what's the deployment model for this in the architecture? How does Firemon deploy?
Yeah, great question. We can deploy in the cloud, as an AMI or as a virtual machine. It's very distributed, can scale to the size of the environment. It can be a single, it can deploy on a unified platform, or it can be a distributed platform deployment. Again, based on the size of the environment. We have, small environments where there may be a handful, 500 or 50 or 60 enforcement points, but we have some environments that have 6,000 or 10,000, and so it just really depends on the size. But very easy to deploy. Can actually be deployed, within hours and up and running.
Very nice. And then what about integration with ServiceNow? They're wanting to know. Is that possible?
Yeah, that's just one ITSM or one, that's definitely a great question. We definitely have integrations with ServiceNow. We even have some integration applications on the ServiceNow store, so you could actually go in and look at that and find our workflow integration app that ties into the security manager, the Firemon Security Manager platform on the ServiceNow store. But yeah, definitely strong integration with ServiceNow, but other ITMs as well, whether it's Jira or whatever. Again, having that robust API, having those orchestration APIs and those workflow change APIs, headless APIs, all of that works together for those integrations, make the integration a breeze for us.
Excellent. And then what about time to value when implementing Firemon? How quickly can that value be realized?
That is a very good question. It can be, I break it down in a couple of sections. I actually break it down in kind of day one, or day zero as I like to call it, and then day one, and then day 60 and beyond. But from day zero, I mean, there's things that we can find. One of the first things that we look at in a policy or in any security policy, regardless of what that enforcement point is that policy resides on, is we're looking for technical mistakes within that policies. And those things are things that we can find from day zero. We can start looking at the hygiene and finding those technical mistakes within a policy on day one. And then as we continue to monitor the behavior of the policy and apply analytics to that policy, then we can start looking at things like unused rules, unused objects, who's talking to who, surfacing those overly permissive rules that I talked about earlier. Those things, as we collect more data, like any good report, the more time you have to look at the data, the more time you have to correlate and analyze the data, the recommendations are only going to get stronger and the results are only going to get stronger. And so over time, as we're analyzing policy behavior, then looking for those things, finding not necessarily a technical mistake, but a rule that's become stagnant or dormant. That's a problem, because somebody could reuse that object or reuse an IP address related to that object that's contained within that rule, and all of a sudden you have what an auditor or a QSA likes to call inadvertent access. And all of a sudden your policy, that this rule that was dormant, all of a sudden wakes up, and now it's providing access to an area that you never intended it to provide access to. So that's a genuine concern. But being able to find those, that can happen very quickly. But most importantly, we can help you have confidence in your cleanup to make sure that you can get your arms back around the hygiene of your policies very quickly by establishing those behavior analytics to those policies.
Awesome. Well, Tim, I'm afraid we're running out of time here in our live Q&A portion, but there are some more technical questions there for you in the electronic queue. Maybe you can get back to those folks. Thank you so much for your excellent presentation today.
No, I appreciate it. And again, I appreciate everyone's time today. Thank you for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you to Firemon. For more information on Firemon, check out the handouts tab right there, and that's where you can download a PDF resource entitled Compliance Audit Preparation. It's a guide that you can download from Firemon that covers the 5 key steps to prepare for your firewall audit. All right, thank you to everyone who responded there to the poll question. We appreciate that feedback. It's now time to move on to our next presentation on the EcoCast today. I'm excited now to welcome Chris Borales, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Gigamon. Chris, take it away.
My name is Chris Borales, and I do product marketing for Gigamon Security Solutions here. Now, today we're going to be talking about how to secure your cloud environments, right? So here's our quick agenda. So first, we're going to talk about who Gigamon is, just a brief overview of the company as a whole. Then we'll dive in right into talking about visibility and how that's key to understanding and getting a better handle on your cloud environments. Next, we'll talk about the power of network for security and leveraging the network data in order to enable a more mature security posture. And then lastly, we'll cover a brief summary of what we discussed. So You might be familiar with Gigamon if you are in the enterprise space, right? So for over a decade, Gigamon has been a trusted leader in the visibility market. And now what we're doing is we're focusing our innovation on the hybrid cloud, now, which is obviously the de facto infrastructure for a lot of today's environments. Now, Gigamon has been a trusted market leader, and you can see by the blurb that you see there on the screen, Gigamon delivers visibility, security, and analytics on all traffic across the hybrid cloud so that your organization can run fast, stay secure, and innovate. Now, here are some numbers around Gigamon. So Gigamon provides that network visibility analytics on all traffic to over 4,000 of the largest, most complex organizations in the world, including 83 of the Fortune 100. And we're very familiar with large organizations that have complex infrastructures. So we need to be able to work at scale. You can see that by some of the verticals that we call out down at the bottom. 7 of the 10 global banks, top 10 global banks, 10 of the top 10 federal agencies, healthcare, mobile network providers, et cetera. So we are able to scale. So we've been able to do this over the past decade, and we have a good track record of doing so. Now, let's talk a little bit about the cloud and getting a better handle on what's happening with cloud infrastructure and how that's evolving. So when we look back at the days of the on-premise data center, we had lots of servers and tools that we were managing ourselves. And that meant the traffic had to be managed and regulated. Organizations used tools like our network packet broker to make sure that traffic was flowing and going to the right places. Now, over the years, this model has grown more complex, and our products have grown and adapted with them. So to that complexity, right, we're seeing that around 92% of our customer organizations move to the cloud and virtual data centers that carry their own complexity. These get growing more complex. These are not just, they carry their own layer of complexity with them. And beyond that, we're also seeing the growth of 5G that obviously in concurrent with that explosion, that growth of 5G, we'll see the explosion in the number of connected devices on the network with IoT and OT devices specifically. Now, that significantly impacts the complexity of the environment and obviously means new demands on applications and brand new applications that have to take advantage of those performance increases that 5G is going to bring to the table. We're also seeing the impact of the adoption of zero trust infrastructures. This means that the visibility and granular control of your infrastructure is more important than ever. If your organization is going to be adopting zero trust, you need to have that granular control. You need to have that ability you need that visibility in your network in order to do this efficiently and effectively. Now, we're also seeing the evolution of the next gen data center, so that the cloud isn't the only platform that organizations are using. It might be a mix of public cloud, virtual, multi-public, on-prem, et cetera. So whatever permutation it is, that data center isn't going away because of the need for the foundational need for those on-prem tools. So how do we handle this increasing complexity? Getting visibility into these environments is key to avoid these sort of operational missteps and implementation missteps, and ensuring that the app environment to your developers, we want to make sure that the application environment to your developers, to customers and users is high performing. It's secure and helps deliver that competitive advantage for organizations. So how is Gigamon enabling that? So we talked about complexity, right, in that previous slide. So here's another way to visualize all of the issues that I just discussed. But what does it mean today? Really, organizations need a visibility solution. And regardless of the visibility solution, there are some attributes that they need to have in common. So first, the solution needs to be able to acquire traffic. We need to be able to get traffic from anywhere on the network. That means east-west, not just north-south. You need to be able to send traffic to the tools that need to receive it. You also need to be able to detect and discover. What does that mean? Well, regardless of IoT, OT, ICS system devices, there are a wide variety of systems that where endpoint agents can't be installed. So we'll be looking at EDR in just a little bit, but these endpoint tools can't be installed on some of these tools or some of these devices that you might have on the network. you need to be able to get a better handle and detect things that might be lurking in shadow IT instances, torrents, cryptojacking software. You need to be able to discover all of those unmanaged devices and applications as well that might be generating malicious traffic. A big need for visibility. And obviously, last but not least, there's compliance, right? So you need a solution that can help ensure that all of your traffic is in compliance and to basically meet all of your regulatory and compliance needs. Now, we tend to mention a lot of operational requirements like availability and security here, but we don't want to forget about those compliance and audit teams that need visibility as well. And finally, down at the end there, you see troubleshooting. We have such a variety of devices on these environments. How do you make sure that you can troubleshoot issues across these complex environments? You really need to have that added layer of abstraction in your architecture to provide that ability to see everything that's moving across the organization's network. Now, this is where we enter Gigamon Hawk. This is the solution that we call Gigamon Hawk, right? It allows you to take any workload, regardless of what that workload is running on, from those complex infrastructures that we've been discussing, and you can send it across your entire security stack. For example, so our network detection and response tool is called Threat Insight. You can see it in the top right-hand corner there. Now, we'll discuss Threat Insight in a couple minutes. And remember, Hawk is tool or solution agnostic. It's not our job to take sides here. We just want to make sure that your tools have the right data and they aren't bombarded with excess information that might bog down those tools capabilities and your network capabilities. We also want to enable you to work across any environment, and that often means multi-cloud architectures. So it's very typical that we see customers support all of those environments down at the bottom of your screen there. Again, it's our job to facilitate and stay in the middle to ensure none of your data is lost. And what we call this, all this put together, is the deep observability pipeline. Observability being the idea that we need a way to look at the applications that are running in your cloud infrastructure to see beyond metrics, events, logs, and traces, which we call MELT. And what those MELT attributes, that's what developers have built into these applications that provide telemetry that we usually use to see the health and performance of an application. But what we're seeing from talking to customers is that observability organizations, from customers and observability organizations, is that as good as that MELT data is, there's an element that's still missing. That's the element you get when you actually see the traffic in motion, seeing the metadata that can be extracted from your network. And this is where Gigamon fits in by complementing that MELT layer with data that comes from the network. Now, combining that with application level intelligence is something that organizations can really benefit from so that they can avoid the missteps that organizations fall into without having that additional layer of observability. So what does Hawk do? Well, first, it checks all the checkboxes for that complete visibility solution that we were just talking about. It provides data to all, it provides access to data running across the network, regardless of the source. So we have access. We can broker traffic. So we know where that data needs to go and what format it needs to be delivered in. So we know that if a tool maybe supports metadata, which in the case of some application performance monitoring tools or APM tools, we can provide that metadata to the tool instead of raw packets, which then ultimately reduces the traffic to that tool by about 90 to 95%. And for tools that need raw packets, we can ensure that they don't receive duplicate packets. We can transform the data. So as security needs increase, so does the need for data encryption. But with Hawk, organizations can encrypt or decrypt traffic on the fly, quarantine traffic, and then re-encrypt the traffic and send that re-encrypted traffic back to where it needs to go. And on the analysis front, we can analyze the analytics that go beyond those MELT characteristics that I mentioned earlier. Hawk allows you to pull data from multiple sources and derive contextual information from that data to let operations really see what's happening on the network. Now, underlying all those functions that we just talked about, we have an architecture that really goes from physical and virtual taps at the lowest level into our operating system at the next level, and then into the GigaSmart layer, which is where those deduplication, encryption, and other transformation occurs that we just talked about, all the way up to the Fabric Manager that puts it all together into a single pane of glass where operations teams can manage these complex environments. Okay, now that's Hawk, right? So that's one part of our visibility story. Now let's talk about security. And we're going to talk about, we were talking a lot about how getting better visibility into the network enables data transformation, acquisition, et cetera. So we'll talk about security now. And how do we take that data generated by Hawk, bring that into a security context and into a security operations team where it can be used to find threats on the network. After all, we're talking about network security, right? So we want to make sure we bring it back full circle. So here's where we go. If you recall, I mentioned that we can send data from any workload to any tool that might need that data. Obviously, a big recipient of that data are the security tools that I got listed on the right-hand side there. Now, at the top of that list, you can see that small orange box. I have a box over our network detection and response tool that we call Threat Insight. So let's talk a little bit about security operations and the challenges that our security teams that we're seeing are facing out there. So first of all, we're seeing that average dwell times are still very high. IBM's recent cost of a data breach report notes that the average days to detect and to identify and contain a data breach are still over 280 days. So attackers are still lingering very long in networks. Next, 69% of SOC analysts cite lack of visibility into network traffic as the top reason for SOC ineffectiveness, the top reason. So they can't see what's really happening on the network. They need that additional visibility. 84% of SOC analysts rank minimization of false positives as the most important SOC activity. That means that SOC analysts aren't focusing on doing their jobs. They're not focusing on handling threats. They're focusing on putting out fires that are created as a result of false positives. That shouldn't be the case. And lastly, 52% of SOC analysts report that they need access to more out-of-the-box tools. They need something that's more at hand that can get them started on their investigations so that they can put out those fires immediately. So that's just setting the context for what's going on the security side of the fence. Now, when we take a look at what security operations teams are doing to address these concerns and to address all of these points that we just mentioned, what we really see is a couple common tools that are being implemented. So the layer at the bottom there that you see is called the MITRE ATT&CK framework. The MITRE ATT&CK framework is really just the security world's common language for talking about a security incident and a data breach. Now, all the way from the left, starting from initial access, going all the way to the right and exfiltration and impact, what security operations teams do is implement certain tools. So the first tool that a lot of security operation teams do is they'll implement what's called a SIM. So the SIM is able to collect and correlate data from a lot of IT and security systems. And while the data that the SIM is acquiring does span the breadth of that attack lifecycle, the logs and alerts don't necessarily include the level of detail that's needed to understand the broader context and activity of an attacker. So they're not getting the full depth of what's really happening on the network. And cyber criminals are getting better at modifying those logs and obfuscating what they're doing on the network. So sometimes those SIM logs aren't always reliable. So what we see is organizations, security operations teams, they often then implement an endpoint detection response tool or an EDR tool. Now, EDRs are great for identifying unusual behavior on the endpoints, but like we just mentioned, endpoint tools don't always have full visibility into all the devices on the network. There are a lot of unmanaged devices out there, so you're not always seeing the full picture. So what this means is even after installing SIM, endpoint detection response, gaps still remain. We lack those visibility into all devices, visibility into all networks, visibility into all traffic. This is where threat insight comes in, or network detection and response comes in. So a network detection and response tool really completes this SOC visibility triad and helps organizations identify threat behavior on the network, because what Gigamon has built a reputation on is understanding the importance of the packet, understanding how the network packet is really the single source of truth, and that even as cyber criminals are getting better at obfuscating logs, are getting better at disabling endpoint detection and antivirus tools, they can't escape the data that's generated from the network. They need those, as they're conducting operations, the network still leaves those traces. Those footprints are still there based on the network traffic that they're generating. Now, how does an organization get the most out of this network traffic? How does an organization put this network traffic to use? That is through proactive threat hunting. So what we talk about proactive threat hunting, really what Threat Insight is doing is it's providing and positioning organizations to proactively hunt for threats before they become an alert, to sort of, because we don't want those dwell times to exceed 280 days. Obviously, we want those dwell times to be greatly reduced. Security operations teams need to be on the proactive side. They need to be looking for threats actively on the network. So what does proactive threat hunting look like? First, it starts with a security operations person, maybe a security analyst, coming up with a hypothesis, formulating that hypothesis. They're going to conduct research to see whether or not the hunch that they had is true or not. And if it's not, they go back. Disproven, hunch was disproven, they go back and formulate another hypothesis. If it's proven, if that hypothesis is proven, then what they're going to do, they're going to pivot and expand the scope. So maybe, hey, this IP was generating some interesting alerts. Let's go expand it. They expand the scope to other IPs. Then, once that happens, either a full-blown incident response occurs, so they should to fully remediate the incident. And then in order to remediate future incidents, what they're going to do is develop new detection content. Now, all of this process, remember, Threat Insight, Gigamon's network detection and response tool, is there to enable this proactive threat hunting. So when we talk about Threat Insight, it really is our high-velocity cloud-native network detection response tool. This is built by incident responders for incident responders. And what we're doing is we're taking all of that visibility that we're getting from the network, and we're putting it to use in a network detection and response tool that gives you the capability to find and stop threats before they have an impact in your organization. So obviously, we are pairing that visibility that we've been talking about and putting it to use. So visibility, threat detection, and response, all with high fidelity alerts, all with that are generated, these detections and alerts are generated not just based on machine learning detections that we might see in the environment, but also on human analysis and behavioral threat analysis that our teams are doing, as we'll get into that in just a second. And we enable this rapid and informed response to these threats. It is a SaaS solution, so it is rapidly deployed. It's being constantly updated. It's always available. And we have a team of experts on the back end, our advanced applied threat research team down there at the bottom, the ATR team. These are the folks that are using or tuning our detections, that are they are tuning our detections. They're incorporating and ingesting the latest intelligence, incorporating those into our new detections. And then our technical success managers, our TSM team, is there to handhold organizations to make sure that they're implementing the tool correctly, that they are getting up and running quickly. Now, here's how it all sort of works. We have all of these workloads and this infrastructure that we've been talking about previously, all of that there on the left. Then we add the Gigamon Deep Observability Pipeline to provide additional visibility. And then we add Threat Insight as the detection response capability there that really unifies network operations and security operations teams to accelerate that response to threats. So we're not seeing those extended dwell times. We're providing unequaled network visibility that your teams can really use to help secure your cloud instances. And this helps extend Gigamon's value to your security analysts, threat hunters, and incident responders. So we're really taking all of the insights that we're getting from our visibility and deep observability pipeline, and we're putting those into a tool where those detections can be actionable and that your security teams can really put to use. Now, here's sort of the big summary here, right? Threat insight paired with Gigamon's deep observability pipeline, it helps you prioritize what matters. It helps you create comprehensive investigations. It helps you focus on real world threats, and it helps you leverage our world-class expertise so that you can put our world-class expertise to use for you. Now, I think I'm running a little long here, but I believe we can open it up to some questions. So we'll go ahead and start the Q&A right now. Thanks for watching. Again, my name is Chris Morales, Product Marketing for Gigamon, signing off. We'll talk soon, and I will answer your questions now. Thanks.
All right, great presentation, Chris. Really appreciate that. I've just brought up the poll question for everyone out there that says, what additional information would you like about the Gigamon solution? And we want to get your feedback on that while we take your questions. So lots of good questions coming in. I'll start with this first one for you, Chris. They want to know, how does Gigamon handle encrypted traffic, and how does this apply to security teams?
Sure. So what Gigamon does with encrypted traffic is we have, as part of our Hawk platform, there is we call it the TLS and SSL decryption module. So what happens is all encrypted traffic can go, what we can do is we can assign specific, what we essentially do is we automatically, we can detect encrypted traffic, and we can decrypt it and then pass that along to our security solution in order to sort of enhance the detections there. So what it's doing is it's giving that additional visibility into that typically, black box type of communication that happens on the network. So what we're doing is, especially what we're seeing in the wake of some of these ransomware attacks, some of these more advanced attacks, is that cyber criminals are using encrypted traffic to disguise their traffic, to hide in sort of hide in plain sight. And what our module allows you to do is encrypt traffic, send that decrypted, our encrypted module allows you to decrypt traffic, send it to the security tools that you need it to go to, and then re-encrypt that traffic as needed, so that you have that visibility into the traffic, so that you can do analysis and detections and then search for potential threat actors on your network, so that you can get that visibility into that traffic. Does that make sense there?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, thank you for clarifying exactly how that works. Yeah, let's see. Here's another good question. They want to know, how does network detection and response vary from endpoint detection and response?
Great. So what we're really doing with network detection and response, and we hear a lot of sort of three-letter acronyms thrown around a lot. So we'll hear EDR, we'll hear NDR, we'll hear XDR. What NDR does, or network detection and response, is doing is it's really leveraging the immutable truth of the network packet, and it's using that to make your security teams more effective. So we can take network traffic, encrypt it, even if it's encrypted, we can decrypt it and put that into our detection engines and make sure that you are seeing, your security operations teams are seeing really, what's happening on the network, to make sure that there is no lateral movement, there is no privilege escalation, there is no malicious C2. And we're generating those detections based on the traffic that's happening on the network. So where it differs from endpoint detection and response is really EDR tools. They are examining these endpoints hosts that are typically managed. They'll have an endpoint agent on there, and what's happening is that, especially sort of with the diversity of these network environments that our customers have, there's a number of unmanaged or hosts that can't have these endpoint agents installed. So what's happening is there's this sort of visibility gap that is present. So how do you get around that visibility gap? Well, let's look at the traffic that's being generated by these unmanaged hosts, by these IoT devices, by these operational technology devices, by these ICS systems. We can analyze the traffic, like I said, you leverage that immutable power of the network packet and bring that into the security toolkit so that your security teams can leverage that information and put it to use and try to hunt for and find threats on the network.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, thank you for explaining that difference there.
Sure.
Another question, what is the SOC visibility triad?
Sure. So I briefly mentioned this during the call, and the SOC visibility triad is really sort of the combination of, and this is a concept coined by Gartner, I believe, a few years ago, where what they're saying is a security operations team, in order to have sort of a baseline level of maturity, what the security operations center needs to have is a SIEM. So you have your event management system, you have your endpoint detection and response tool that's monitoring your endpoints, and then you have your network detection and response tool that is monitoring the network for malicious activity. So all three of these, the SIEM, the EDR, and the NDR, form the SOC visibility triad that let you bring everything together and really get that most comprehensive, sort of most mature security posture that you can for your security operations teams.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, let's see. I'm afraid we're running out of time here in our scheduled live Q&A, Chris, but there's some more technical questions there for you in the queue. If folks want to get started with Gigamon, what do you recommend?
So what I recommend is visit our website, reach out to our overlay teams, just put in a request via the website, and someone will reach out to you and let you know how to get started with this. I know quite a few organizations they might have Gigamon network products in their environments currently, but what I really encourage you to do is take a look at some of the security tools that we're offering. Our Threat Insight product is really unique, and it really helps drive that sort of revolution in network detection and response. So yeah, take a look at the website, take a look at Threat Insight.
Excellent. Yeah, sounds like a great option for folks to get started and learn more. Chris, really great presentation. Thank you so much for being on the EcoCast today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. And I encourage everyone to check out the handouts tab there as well. There's a link to the Gigamon resource entitled Closing the Cloud Visibility Gap that you can download for additional information. It's really well done. A series of all sorts of resources. There's PDFs, links, videos, all part of this one link on cloud visibility. So make sure that you check out that resource. And of course, we appreciate your feedback there on the poll question. All right, so with that, it's now time to move on to our next presentation on today's EcoCast. Welcome to Jim Armstrong, Senior Product Marketing Director at Snyk. Jim, it's great to have you on. Take it away.
And welcome to this overview of the Snyk Developer Security Platform. We built the Snyk Security Platform because we fundamentally believe that developers are the right person to own security for their applications. This is important because the pace of digital innovation is so fast today that the only way to keep up with that is for developers to take care of security as they build their applications. But also because developers far outnumber the security people on your teams. And the only way that security can be an enabler to development instead of a bottleneck is by empowering those developers to handle security. Now, when we look at the modern application, it's not just the code that the developers write anymore, and it's not even the dependencies that they might bring in from the open source world. The modern application is made up of all different types of code. The cloud itself is just software, and it's all controlled by infrastructure as code. And so throughout the application stack, Things that used to be controlled by a central IT team are now controlled by code and by software. And that's where we built the Snyk Developer Security Platform. So as we go through this overview, that's what I want to show you. We're going to start by looking at the different aspects of an application that Snyk controls. And that's exactly what we have in our sample application that we'll take a look at as we go through the Snyk platform. You can see here, we've got an application that's made up of many different microservices. Each of these services runs in its own container. There's multiple languages that are used. We can deploy this to Kubernetes. We have Terraform configurations. All of that is controlled and contained in a single Git repo. And that's exactly what's reflected in Snyk as well. What I've done here is I've imported that GitHub repo into Snyk. And you can see by doing that, it's captured all the code here, all the different types of code that are part of this project. It's captured the different open source dependency manifests that are available as part of this application. It's captured Docker files to start doing container analysis. It's captured also Terraform and Kubernetes files. So I have all the different types and components of this application captured here just by doing this Git repo. Now I'm going to come back to the individual results of some of those tests here in just a second, but our whole goal here is to enable developers to handle security on their own. And that means Snyk really needs to work in the places where developers work. Now you're going to see more of the Snyk interface, but I also want to show you some of the other places that Snyk can work in this workflow. So part of that is having Snyk in places like the IDE. It's having it in their Git repos so that we do checks as they commit code. It's having it in places like CI/CD so that we can also run automated checks as code is checked in, as pull requests are merged, and before things get to the point of being deployed. So first, let's go back and take a look at Snyk inside the IDE. In this case, I'm working on a part of the application that's using Node. And so I have my package.json file here that determines all the dependencies that Node's going to use. And the first thing you'll see is that we have this little advisory that pops up that says that our advisor score is low. This is an early warning system for developers. What Snyk Advisor does is it does an analysis of your project, and it looks not only at the security of that package, but it looks at other key indicators to indicate whether this is a package that you really want to use or not. We look at things like popularity. Are a bunch of people downloading it? Has it been well maintained? Are people creating new updates for it on a continuous basis or not? How secure is it? That's the core of the Snyk check, of course, and the community around it. How many contributors are there to this project? You can see in this case it got a relatively low score because the maintenance isn't very up to date on this particular package. Now that's just an early warning system. That's not an actual security test. What you can see that we've done here is we have a plugin for Snyk that's installed in our IDE, and we've run a test against this application. All the different components of the application have been tested by Snyk. We have a Snyk open source test that's going through all those open source manifests and checking them for vulnerabilities. The Snyk code tests, which are checking our own first-party code for any vulnerabilities that exist there. We also do quality checks against that code. We do configuration checks that would include your Terraform, would include Kubernetes YAML, and we run container security tests as well. Let's take a look at some of these. If I look at my open source test, in this case, I've tested a Java POM XML file. You can see that I found a couple issues. This one happens to be a license issue. Those are something that Snyk can point out to users so that they know what they're getting into. I have several other high severity issues in this XML. And of course, I have all the security details that I might want. But probably what's most important to a developer is to know how to fix this particular application. And so they can come right into this description and they can see how to fix this application and fix this particular component. The same thing happens with the other aspects of Snyk. So for instance, in one of my Node.js code files, I have a cross-site scripting vulnerability. This is in the actual code I wrote. And you can see that it shows me the steps through my code where this vulnerability is introduced and how it actually gets consumed by my application. And you can see that it's given me suggested fixes again so that I can take care of that particular issue. If I go to configuration, you can see that it's telling me I've got a Kubernetes file that has a potential configuration issue, and the same with container tests. With container tests, I can see all the vulnerabilities that exist in those containers and I can dig into each one. But also with a container test, the other thing we can do is point you to a better base image. In this case, there's a slightly updated image that would reduce my vulnerabilities pretty drastically. And so I can make that change very easily in my Docker file. Now, the other thing we said is that we want to put Snyk into the Git repos where people work. Again, we looked at this Git repo before. You can see that Snyk is doing things like opening pull requests for me, suggesting pull requests that I might make that will make my application better and fix some of these vulnerabilities proactively. I can also open pull requests from the vulnerabilities that are discovered, and we'll see that here in just a minute. But another part of this is implementing checks that happen automatically on these pull requests. And Snyk can run through those checks automatically on those pull requests and provide input as to whether this check will pass and whether it should be merged or not. We've also implemented Snyk in another way here. We said Snyk should be involved in CI/CD tools. Those are other places where a developer spends a lot of their time. In this case, we've kept everything in GitHub. We're using GitHub Actions and GitHub code scanning to automatically scan as code is committed to a repository. So in this case, we've got a sample GitHub action here that uses Snyk, and it tests my repository as code is committed. And you can see it's found several vulnerabilities in one of the Maven components that's part of this application. And those vulnerabilities show up in my repository as well. Now, another important aspect of this platform is, of course, the security. After all, this is a developer security platform. And so security intelligence built into the platform is really important. That'll come up in the way that we discover vulnerabilities and the information that we provide to a developer about those vulnerabilities, but it also comes up in exactly how we fix those vulnerabilities and recommend that developers take care of them. Now, that security intelligence has to be combined with application intelligence to make this all really work for a developer. And application intelligence really encompasses several aspects. First of all, as we've been talking about, it looks at all the different parts of the application, but also understanding how particular parts of that application work. How does information flow through the application? What code is actually executed? What packages are actually executed if I have a container and it's running live in Kubernetes? All of that is important for understanding what is the most important set of vulnerabilities to fix in my application. So let's take a look at security intelligence and application intelligence inside Snyk. Now, we're back and looking at a Java component in my application. This is the open source manifest for Java. And in this case, you can see the standard security information, CVE number, the CVSS score, a severity rating, all the typical things that you would expect to see from a security tool. But we can also see additional information. For instance, in this case, this particular vulnerability has a mature exploit available for it. That means it's probably fairly easy for a bad actor to try and exploit this vulnerability. This vulnerability is also reachable. The way that our code works in this case makes it possible for this particular vulnerability to actually be loaded so that somebody could take advantage of it. Those are both really important characteristics in determining what's the most important vulnerabilities to fix in this code, which is why a medium severity vulnerability is ranked above a high severity vulnerability. And you see that reflected in the vulnerability score that's shown over here on the right. The vulnerability scores in Snyk take into account the severity of the vulnerability, exploit maturity, reachability, and several other components to help a developer reason about what's the most important vulnerabilities to go through and fix. So you can see below we've got another vulnerability, and we have an insight here. This vulnerability, while it's high severity, and in this particular case, may not be all that bad for us. And the reason is that for this vulnerability to be exploitable, we know we have to have polymorphic type handling. Again, that's something that our security research team has built into this security finding. And so in this case, we've been able to analyze the code and determine that we don't have polymorphic type handling enabled. And so this vulnerability is probably not as bad. Now, from here, you probably want to go about fixing vulnerabilities. And again, if you're a developer, you could look through the details here and we'll tell you how to fix these vulnerabilities. For instance, we've got the fix information here, and we saw the fix information in the IDE as well. I could go back to my code and implement that, but I can also just fix this individual vulnerability by clicking a button and open a pull request. Or if I really want to, I can click a button and fix as many vulnerabilities as I want all in one pull request. What Snyk will do is logically work through all the different dependencies that are part of this application and work out what the most reasonable version is to go to that will both fix the vulnerabilities and not break my application. So we're not simply moving to the most recent version of a package. We're trying to move to a version of the package that won't break the application. That's a really important part of the developer experience. And we also have to look at all these different vulnerabilities and all the different packages that are part of this manifest, the dependencies of the dependencies and their dependencies as well, and determine the best route to fix as many vulnerabilities as we can in this particular application. That's part of this developer experience, making this as easy as possible for a developer to actually just implement these fixes straight away. Now let's look at our own code in the context of this application. As I mentioned before, this application is made up of multiple services, and so we have a number of different first-party code files that are part of this application as well, written in a number of different languages, and you can see that we've detected those automatically as we imported this code from the repo. You also saw that in the IDE we detected these. We could scan them in the Git repos or in CI/CD if we wanted to do that as well. In this case, the first vulnerability we see is a cross-site scripting vulnerability. And if I click full details here, it'll do a couple of things. One, it builds up the flow analysis, so I can see exactly how my code works and how this particular bit of data is flowing through my application and where that vulnerability is introduced with that bit of data. If I had multiple files, I could follow this bit of information through each file individually, but in this case, it just flows through one file. The other thing I have is the fix analysis. So again, I have samples here that will help me understand how I can change my code so that I can fix this particular vulnerability. And I also have a description of the vulnerability available to me here as well. If we go back to Snyk, there's one other interesting thing, and you may have seen this a second ago too. I have this ability to learn more about this type of vulnerability. This is using Snyk Learn, and essentially what we're doing is providing security education for developers built straight into the Snyk product, but also available for free outside the Snyk product. In this case, we have a cross-site scripting lesson, and as a developer, I can go through this particular lesson, I can learn what cross-site scripting is, and I can actually play around with it in the browser. I can create a sandboxed application and explore what cross-site scripting does and how you go about fixing it. Again, another important aspect of developer empowerment. We also said that Snyk will check all the infrastructure as code files, the configurations that make up this application. In this case, we have Kubernetes YAML, we have Terraform files as well that all help to implement this application, to actually deploy it and make it run and get the environment set up for that as well. So Snyk infrastructure's code will go through and check these files for us, and again, provide the results that a developer can use very easily. We find the issue in those infrastructure as code files. We help a developer understand what that issue is and how to go about resolving these issues. Again, a piece of Snyk that can be implemented in your IDE. It could be implemented in your CI/CD flows. If you're a Terraform user and you use Terraform Cloud, you can use Snyk there. You can scan your Terraform plan files. Anywhere you want to implement Snyk, you certainly can. And then finally, Snyk also scans your containers. And we're going to look at containers in several different aspects here. First, the code that makes up a container. This is where containers start, and this is the place where Snyk starts with containers as well. Again, we saw container scanning in the IDE. Here, we've imported a repo that has a Docker file in it, and so Sneak does analysis of that Docker file. What we're detecting in the Docker file is the base image that's being used by this particular part of our application. And here we can see that our application starts with a node image that's loaded with vulnerabilities. And again, to make it as simple as possible for a developer to fix, we have a button that we can open that will go back to that Docker file and change the base image to any of these that we might want to use. And of course, that can be automated. Now the Docker file, of course, is just the static contents. It's not the actual image. And so Sneak can actually scan your images as well. Often implemented in CI/CD, but another one that you could scan just about anywhere you want to. When we scan a container image, you can see that we again provide the base image fix advice, just like we did from the Docker file. We also produce all the vulnerability information about the individual vulnerabilities that are detected here. The fix details are in here too. So as a developer, I can use this information to go through and determine how to fix these vulnerabilities in my containers. But the other aspect of containers is that they actually need to run somewhere. That's what really makes them interesting. And in this case, we're deploying them to Kubernetes. Now, Sneak can also monitor our Kubernetes clusters and detect workloads as they're deployed to the cluster. Again, scanning those container images to look for vulnerabilities, letting you know that this container is actually live somewhere, and finding vulnerabilities. And as new vulnerabilities are discovered, alerting you to that fact as well. Some other interesting information comes up because of the fact that we're actually scanning these containers as they're live. So for instance, we provide information about the configuration of that container in the Kubernetes cluster. This information, this configuration detail, might make a vulnerability worse. And so here, for instance, we see that we've raised the priority score of this vulnerability because of the configuration. We also see all the other details that we saw before about vulnerabilities when we scanned them with Sneak. But something else really interesting is available here as well. Through our partnership with Sysdig. Sysdig is looking for threats and anomalies that happen as applications run. And they feed all that information back to the security and operations teams that's managing the cluster. But what they supply back to Sneak is information about those running vulnerabilities. So in this case, you can see we've got an image with over 500 vulnerabilities in it. But because of our integration with Sysdig, we can see that only 34 of those vulnerabilities are actually from running packages in that live container. And in fact, only one of them is in a high severity vulnerability. So again, as a developer, I can look at this and I can reason about what the most important aspect of my application is to fix. In this case, I've got a high severity vulnerability in a running container that's actually in a package that gets executed. And of course, this platform is extensible. As your developers are going through and finding and fixing vulnerabilities, we can integrate with their Git repos. We can integrate with your tools like Atlassian, your CI/CD tools, your infrastructure as code tools, and your cloud, of course, as well. And across all of these applications that might be tested, we provide the governance that you need to show that developers are actually taking care of the vulnerabilities that they're detecting. So you know with assurance that your risk is being reduced. So that's our overview of the Sneak Developer Security Platform. If you want to try Sneak, you can go to sneak.io and try it for free.
All right, excellent presentation. Really cool demo there of the Sneak platform. I've just brought up a poll question for everyone out there that says, what additional information would you like about this Sneak solution? And we'll leave that up here for a few moments while we announce our next Amazon $500 gift card prize. And to do that, I'm excited to bring in Mr. Scott Becker of Actual Tech Media. Hey, Scott.
Hey, David. Thanks. Yeah, let's get right to that prize drawing. So the winner of our second $500 Amazon.com gift card is Cameron Moore from Nebraska. So congratulations to Cameron. We'll be in touch about claiming your prize. And I'll just go ahead and leave that poll up there for one more minute here. And I do want to remind everybody about the Sneak PDF that's in your handout section. It's a paper about developer-first security. A lot of great information in there, and of course, if you're interested in more information from Sneak, just go ahead and click on what you'd like to see right here in this poll. Okay, so thanks to everybody who has filled out this poll. We appreciate it. And now it's time for our next presentation in the Securing the Cloud EcoCast. And our next session comes from Duo Security. And presenting for Duo is Seema Kathuria. She's Senior Product Marketing Manager. So I will turn things over to Seema.
Seema Kathuria. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager at Duo Security, a Cisco company. And I welcome you today to learn about From VPN to VPNless, Modernizing Secure Remote Access. Today, the agenda will be, first, I'll talk a little bit about the context of secure remote access, what it looked like in the past, and how we move forward to the present and future with securing remote access. What are some of the challenges with exclusive use of virtual private networks or VPNs? And what does VPN-less remote access look like when you compare it with a traditional VPN type of access? Then I'll also share some of the key things to look for when you are evaluating solutions that are VPN-less secure remote access solutions, and then dive into the Duo Network Gateway solution from Duo/Cisco. I'll also like to share an overview of how Cisco itself, our parent company, has adopted a VPN-less solution from Duo, the Duo Network Gateway, as part of their Zero Trust security strategy. And finally, I'll share some great resources for you as next steps to be able to learn more. One of the interesting things that we've discovered, and this is through actual market research, is that as we went into 2020 and then going now from 2020 all the way to present day, Gartner had said that by the end of last year, 2021, 51% of all knowledge workers worldwide are expected to be working remotely. That's up from 27% in 2019, 2 years prior to that. And this is certainly clear, as we've seen with the global pandemic, it certainly really necessitated and precipitated the need to work from places other than physical locations that were very much fixed. And so knowledge workers, as a part of the broader community worldwide, had to really think about how they can have flexibility to be able to access the corporate resources in a way that was just as if they were in a traditional office. And so we continue to see this trend of even hybrid work moving forward. There won't be the same notion of having a lot of users that are on-prem anymore. More and more will need the flexibility, but also the security to access resources remotely. So we know that remote access isn't going to go away, especially when you look at the global pandemic that accelerated that work from home. It really necessitated organizations thinking about the remote access strategy. Was what they're going to do today going to work for them tomorrow? We saw that, with the global pandemic, of course, that really precipitated this. But even prior to that, even when you look at IT, they were often adopting things like virtual private networks because they realized that it was important to have that flexibility for certain workers to be able to log in no matter where they were logging in from. If it could be from home, it could be from from a remote coffee shop or whatnot. And organizations, of course, today have often relied on virtual private networks. They've been around since the late 1990s, as I'll show you next. And so that was a true and tested technology. However, there are also some drawbacks that they saw when they were going at scale with virtual private networks. And so that had this kind of brought forth this need for having VPN alternatives like VPN-less secure remote access, which we'll talk about in detail today. There's definitely been an evolution when you look at access in general. When you look at the traditional late 20th century technologies of firewalls, routers and firewalls were doing well what they were supposed to do, especially when you looked at workers that were on-prem primarily. They were inside a traditional office or a branch office. It was pretty much well known what kind of secured access policies you could apply at that point within a firewall. And so the access control was in a more kind of known environment, and it was pretty much more of a fixed perimeter. Over time, as virtual private networks came on to play in order to address remote work, where you had a couple of workers that needed to remote into that corporate resources, it could be sales teams, it could be teams that needed to work in places that were not inside of an office environment. Virtual private networks came in the scene in 1996. And then as we went into the 2000s, Google actually initiated a framework called BeyondCorp. The idea behind BeyondCorp is that it was a VPN-less application that would really apply zero trust principles. And internally, they called it Beyond Corp, saying that they're going to allow their employees to be able to access resources only after they go through a user trust check and a device trust check. So this meant that they need to make sure that those users and devices could be trusted before allowing them any specific granular access on a per application basis. Geo in 2017, GeoSecurity was the first to bring a commercial implementation of that Google Beyond Corp framework. We recognize the importance of going beyond just applying strong multi-factor authentication to also applying those strong access controls no matter where users are connecting from. You might be on-premise, but you could also be off-premise. And so as a user, you need that flexibility and the seamless access to anything that you need. It could be a application that is a native, very much a custom application. It could be a SaaS application like Salesforce or your Workday application. Wouldn't it be convenient to not have to go through a VPN and yet have this really strong security in place through a VPN-less modern secure remote access solution? So that's why Duo brought to market a implementation called Duo Beyond, which today we'll talk about the Duo Network Gateway as part of the Duo Beyond solution. The idea behind VPNless is ultimately to provision granular access controls for every application that is requested by a user, regardless of the network location. This is in contrast to traditional VPN, which allows broader access to multiple applications and resources once an employee has been actually let into that network through the VPN, and they've been granted that access through a VPN client. Next, I'd like to talk about some of the challenges with exclusively relying on virtual private networks or VPNs. With a traditional VPN type of implementation is that the segmentation isn't going to be as granular. Typically, here on the right side, you're seeing a number of different applications that are hosted inside the corporate network, and they're sitting behind usually a firewall, and you'll also then have a VPN server that can then be accessed through a VPN client by the user. The user here shown on the left has a device, usually a laptop of some kind, managed or unmanaged, on which a VPN client needs to be installed. In that case, the user would be let into that corporate application. It could be the employee directories, the human resources, or other applications that are on the corporate network once they've actually made a connection through the VPN server and they've been validated and been authenticated in. One of the drawbacks with this is that, of course, the user is being able to access any application. Even if that user doesn't really by role need to access certain other applications laterally, potentially they could. And so this could be taken advantage of by potentially a malicious insider. So that is, one thing to think about. What kind of access should be given? And is it possible to go beyond just a traditional broad-based access that a VPN could allow for? If you look at the top-level challenges with exclusively relying on VPNs to allow those users into the corporate network, one is it's very much a network-based access. It's not granular to application-specific access. This can create those gaps and vulnerabilities in security that could be exploited by threat actors. If they discover a particular user that is on a laptop accessing all those corporate resources, what if they can get hold of that computer? They can take it over somehow and get that same access and then move laterally to some really, really important information that could be accessed through that VPN client. The second big point is the VPN bandwidth capacity limitations come into place, especially when you look at organizations that had to go really, really at scale with virtual private network implementations. With COVID, especially when you looked at large work from home scenarios, it can really lead to these situations that are really risky. One of the things we find is that certain organizations may end up wanting to implement split tunneling of end user traffic. And this is a practice that security community has long discouraged because it can expose the internet network to malicious outsiders. So, you don't want to be in a precarious situation and having to implement security in a way that is going to make you vulnerable at the end of the day as an organization. So that is something to think about as you're going to VPNs at scale. How do you avoid adopting these more risky implementations? The third big challenge with exclusive use of VPNs is that the growing remote workforce is really increasing the number of VPN licenses that have to be procured by an organization. They are having to rethink their strategy on remote access. Can they effectively even procure and plan for the number of licenses they're going to need to use moving forward, even in a hybrid work scenario where a large majority, unlike in the past, now is dependent on remote access, and they may not go into the office as many days as they used to in the past. So how do you kind of really reconcile the number of licenses and the investment you have to make that you may not have anticipated a year or two ago when you largely had a on-prem workforce? So these are some things and challenges to think about as an organization when you're looking at remote access. How does VPN-less remote access look different from a VPN remote access, as I'd shown in the diagram earlier? With VPN-less remote access, with the Duo Network Gateway sitting here in the middle, between the user device on the one hand, and then between the actual applications that are sitting inside the corporate network, Here you see the same kinds of applications being served inside the corporate network. The difference here is the Duo Network Gateway serves as a reverse proxy, so it mediates a connection. It will first validate the user and the device that's actually trying to access a particular resource. It will force a multi-factor authentication as a first prompt to make sure the user is who he or she says they are. And they'll make sure the user is connecting in a way that's secure from a device that's secure also. It will also apply device posture checking. Is this device something that's going to either be managed or unmanaged? Are there certain policies we want to apply that we're going to check for? At that point, if it determines that the laptop that user is connecting from also looks good, it also determines the MFA has been validated, it will then allow only access to specific application. In this case, we're showing application 1 that was requested. That's the only application at a time that user is then allowed to access. Of course, you could add other mechanisms. For example, if Duo Single Sign-On, which is part of the Duo Beyond portfolio, is enabled, you could have a single sign-on added in addition to this, which will allow access to different applications with a single validated set of credentials. And so this really shows the difference where you're really getting access to that user only to a single application as opposed to broader access to multiple applications. What are the key drivers when you look at 3 key business drivers for which Duo actually built out this solution for allowing VPN-less secure mode access? The first is the users see a very large increase in number of endpoints that are connecting. These large work from home scenarios, for example, there was a really big overload on in terms of VPN connections that had to be made, especially with things like video being turned on. It really put a big bandwidth load. So enabling VPN-less access could really remove that need to actually have this huge overload of the VPNs. Secondly, the granular security that can be applied per application is really important because at the end of the day, users should have, based on their role, only access to certain applications and no others. You don't want to have a gap in security where potentially malicious insiders or other types of users that actually get access to those devices of that user can get access to applications they really shouldn't be. There's also an opportunity to add this multi-factor authentication as part of that access control policy, which really helps reduce risk of identity-related attacks like phishing and others. The third benefit is really user-friendly experiences. So with VPN-less, being able to have the user directly use a web-based browser, for example, and DNG serving as a mediator between that user device and between that application really creates a seamless experience. The user no longer needs to go through a VPN client and has to remember to do that for each and every application that they're accessing, and really introduces a very seamless type of experience for the end user. So this is a third reason to think about a VPN-less solution. What are some of the key high-level kind of summary of what things to look for? When it comes down to a VPN-less solution, you want to provide a consistent user experience. The admin wants to allow users to stay productive, regardless of where they're connecting from. They could be in the office one day, they could be in a coffee shop another day, or they can be working from home 3 or 4 days a week. The experience should be seamless and consistent. The second is applying zero trust security principles is a top of mind for CISOs as well as for the security administrators and the leaders in companies. They want to make sure that every user through multi-factor authentication is being verified and every device is being checked, whether it comes to the operating system being up to date, it comes down to antivirus updates, it comes down to where that device is connecting from. They want to check all those things up front before allowing specific granular application access. And third, of course, not allowing unfettered network access to things that are not supposed to be seen and not be touched by specific users. They want to allow for users to only touch those applications that are required for them to be productive and that they should be allowed to access. And today, we've seen that oftentimes these are web applications, a lot more on, CRM type of tools that are, web-based, a lot of human resources tools that are web-based, as well as SSH services and RDP when it comes to administrator work. So you want to have those admins also logging in securely to the RDP services. The fourth point is being able to manage and support all kinds of devices. We've seen that oftentimes, even in a remote work from home situation, and especially with new employees onboarding, it takes time to get them, manage devices. So there might be scenarios where you might have even contractors that may not get managed devices. How do you make sure you get zero trust security model access and allowing granular control policies, even on unmanaged devices? This is another area that VPN-less solutions can help with. And finally, how do you provide for an agentless security posture checking of devices? Doesn't mean that you want to always have to have an agent installed just to be able to check that device's posture. So this is where another VPN-less solution could help to reduce your need to actually invest in a full-blown necessarily device management checking solution, as well as adding yet another agent. So this is another opportunity for VPN-less to really provide that benefit and value. Let's now talk about the Duo solution that helps with VPN-less access. Duo Network Gateway is part of our Duo Beyond platform that I mentioned early in the presentation as our first entry point into this world of allowing for the journey from VPN to VPN-less. The Duo Network Gateway, which is shown here on the right-hand side here with these two keys, is really our VPN-less remote access proxy solution. And it's allowing you to have a zero trust security approach by establishing trust in users and devices. It reduces risk by restricting access to authorized resources by applying really strong security controls. For one, a managed and up-to-date device can access infrastructure and developer environments. And second, it's going to verify user identity and security posture of the device before granting access to applications. In fact, one of our customers, Tumblr, said, what is nice about the Duo Network Gateway is it's not as disruptive as a random dialogue because the authentication prompt is presented during the authentication event. It's easier to understand and a better experience, especially when it comes for engineering. The teams really find it intuitive. So it's important here to note that at the end of the day, the user just cares about getting to that specific resource. They're not going to care about how they got there and what's coming in between them. They're going to be shown, they're going to get to the application. They won't even know DNG is working in the background and actually being that proxy between that user and the application. And today, of course, we support secure access to any kind of application. It can be a web application, SSH. You can also access RDP soon. So RDP will be supported soon. And we also support public cloud applications that could be hosted in Azure, Amazon Web Services, and Google Cloud. All of this, again, without a VPN being installed on the endpoint device. What was the world like before DNG was there? You know, in the traditional past, here on the right side, you'll see there was this notion of an insider. The person that sat inside the corporate network, someone who's on premise often, they would usually be able to talk directly to that protected application. They were pretty much a trusted user. It was not a case where you were necessarily checking. You know, once you knew that user has been an employee and they're a known entity, they're going to go directly to the application. We want to actually have the Duo Network Gateway come in and be that proxy. It doesn't matter anymore if that user's from the inside or here on the left side from the outside. Every user goes to the Duo Network Gateway. And what happens is that user is going to be accessing a particular protected application here shown on the right, and the Duo Network Gateway will have had that connection point back to that primary identity provider in order to authenticate that user, and having authenticated that user, apply that multi-factor authentication at their mobile authenticator device here on the left side. So the Duo service will actually check in and make sure that they've passed the MFA check, and then they'll allow them that protected application access and only there. If they want to then be able to access any other application, we will have made sure we do know who that user is, and then we might subject them if their accession is not expired to another MFA before allowing access to another application. We no longer have this notion of an inside or outside user. Some of the key highlights from Duo Network Gateway is it's being used today by hundreds of organizations who've adopted this. They've seen this benefit of going to a more modern approach that's removing need for VPN for a number of their sensitive applications. You know, oftentimes they might start with administrator users to actually go ahead and use VPN-less. They recognize how secure it is, how granular it is. They want to apply policies for RDP or SSH services, so specific applications. And then we've seen the largest number of users onboarded, which was here at Cisco in our parent company. 127,000 plus users were onboarded to Duo Network Gateway to allow access to now 100 applications they can access through this DNG, Duo Network Gateway. And finally, when we look at our customers' own deployments of Duo Network Gateways, we're seeing now 2.5 million monthly authentications that are happening, meaning these different end users at these organizations are authenticating into the Duo Network Gateway, and they're being given that seamless access to their on-prem apps. And we're seeing more and more enterprise also customers showing interest in this particular solution. Let me now share with you a great journey that Cisco itself has had with regards to moving from a VPN to a VPN-less future. And this journey really started in 2020 when we had a number of employees had to go remote really, really soon. And we didn't have even the benefit of time to actually go ahead and start thinking about that VPN-less journey. But it was something that it really kind of precipitated that discussion internally. One of the key things that you'll note is we saw the need for being able to provide a seamless access for the end users, in this case, our employees here at Cisco, kind of a web-like experience, really, whether they're accessing cloud applications shown up here on the left, things like our WebEx meetings, things like Office 365 and ServiceNow, Salesforce applications, all the way to on-premises applications, our own Cisco intranet or wiki pages, being able to access our own internal business applications in a way that it didn't matter where those users would end up logging in from. In fact, the user shouldn't even have to know what the kind of application they're using and have to select. They should just care that how can they get their work done in a way that's easy for them. And if you noticed, and if you actually did this right, Director of Security Engineering said we need to do it in such a way that users won't even notice that there's a change on the back end. And at the same time, we don't want to compromise on security. In fact, we want to make it both easier and more secure to have remote access, just as we had on-premise access. And when we think about what zero trust looks like for Cisco, every time anyone's trying to log into an application, we're going to make sure it is them by checking that user's own who that user is and authenticating them. We're going to make sure the device that they're using and connecting from is going to be up to date and is healthy, that it has all the different health checks checked on it to make sure that it's not an unmanaged device. And also that the connection is with a device that we trust. Oftentimes we don't want to be allowing personal devices. Even in my case, I remember that when I'm trying to use a personal device to access certain corporate apps, it will not allow me through. Finally, we want to provide a frictionless experience for users. So we don't, in this case, want to force them to go through a VPN client every time they need to connect to some internal resources. When we think about the journey that we want our users to take, we want three things that Cisco is looking for when we looked at the zero trust goals. The first was improving the experience for the user. We wanted to provide borderless or VPN-less access. And this created new information and data governance opportunities because we knew that when you're allowing only granular application access, that meant we will have more control over the data that's actually accessed behind it and governing that end-to-end access. Finally, we wanted to improve the security posture. Certainly, that was a huge goal as far as being able to have more granular controls over what users and devices and doing that device posture checking at minimum before we would allow that access. So let me talk about kind of what are the steps that happen when you look at the architecture of what we built here. The first step was we make sure that the user is going through a multi-factor authentication. They need to be prompted for that in order to prevent fraudulent login from some user that's unknown. After their credentials have been entered, a second factor is basically going to use to verify the user who they say they are. If a bad actor at that point is trying to log in with stolen credentials, that multi-factor ought to prevent that access. In fact, Cisco even allows users to enroll themselves as well as add and change authentication methods over time if needed. This makes it really easy for users to have that control and not have to rely on the IT or help desk every time they have a new device that they need to enroll into MFA. And of course, our users have a variety of devices. Some may be managed, some unmanaged. So it's important to be able to allow for certain devices. As long as they have the associated device policies on them, we can actually allow them through. Another important point to be made is we have single sign-on, and single sign-on will allow these users to access a variety of applications. Many of them will be cloud applications, and we also saw how if you needed to go beyond that to internal applications, that's where the dual network gateway can also play an important part in front of on-prem applications. This allows really users to log into different applications, all with a single set of username and password. They don't have to create multiple passwords, which otherwise can be really risky. And oftentimes they'll end up creating simple passwords, which again are easy to remember and therefore easy to guess. So it prevents the risk inherent in users managing multiple passwords. Trust Monitor is also kicking in, and that is going to actually check in if something unusual is happening when the user is actually logging in. So during the login attempt, maybe the login is from a country that's usually not the one that we expect that user to log in from, or maybe it's an odd time that the user is logging in. So if we usually see some users logging in at midnight, but others it's unusual for them, we might go ahead and flag that to the admin, and we would actually flag it and not allow that user to access the application. In addition to first checking that device user trust, we want to next check the device trust. We want to establish trust in the devices that are being used. Importantly, we're going to check if the user's browser is up to date. We can do a variety of checks that enable browser checking, as well as check if there's password protection enabled, and things like screen lock are enabled on that device. These are things that can be important in order to reduce the risk. A device health app that is from DO is sitting on the user's desktop, and it'll even check things like the operating system version, firewalls, and system passwords on that particular device. If the device is failing the health check, the application will tell the user how to fix it, and the user could even self-remediate before access is granted. In some cases, Cisco managed devices that Cisco itself owns or devices that we manage can only access certain applications because we believe that those are more sensitive and we want only certain users to be able to a managed device be able to access them. Trusted endpoints is the final piece, which was really verifying the device is corporate managed or not. And if the device is not trusted, then access will be denied, certainly. Finally, Trust Monitor will surface anything that could be unusual about the access device, either new to that device or new to the application. That application itself is not known. Finally, after checking the users that could be trusted and the device trust has been established, the last part is how individual applications will then be accessed. Geo Central is a really important feature that comes in Geo Beyond also. And it's really a place which houses all the users' applications in one location. It is really a browser portal, and it's really easy to kind of then, from that place, be able to access any of those applications using Geo Single Sign-On. Adaptive access policies can also be customized based on the specific application. Financial applications might require devices that need to be fully updated, and access may only be permitted from approved countries, for example. And whereas in contrast, other less sensitive applications could have less stringent requirements. So that gives more time for remediation or more flexibility. Not to be missed is the on-premise access without a VPN, which is allowed by the Geo Network Gateway. The Geo Network Gateway is kind of, in a way, publishing those on-prem and homegrown applications externally without the need for a VPN. Whereas with a VPN, user and device were only checked the first time, now with the Geo Network Gateway, the checks happen at the application level. And that is what reduces the risk of lateral movement and out-of-date devices. All in all, you're getting user trust, device being trust, and then finally you're building in the application-specific access, whether those are cloud applications or in this case on-prem or homegrown applications. A Geo Network Gateway combined with Geo Single Sign-On makes it a seamless experience for end users to log into what they need to stay productive. Here's a quote from our Director of Security Architecture and Research at Cisco. She's talking about how, Duo being platform agnostic and it being able to be integrated with any identity provider, for example, and being seamless to any application, we will be able to protect every application regardless of where it lives. It could be in the cloud, or it could be hosted, it could be on-prem. Duo's ability to easily protect any application reduces my team's effort, freeing them up to focus on other important work. So at the end of the day, we are saving the IT administrators and the security administrators time, and we're giving them that assurance that they can actually have a very secure access experience for their users. And if their users are productive and they can actually be self-managing their devices and enrolling, that again gives them back time so that they can focus on other high priority items. And it is important to note, of course, that there's no such thing as a little bit of security. The idea is that you want to have application security that's pervasive, that at the end of the day benefits more than one kind of stakeholder. So that's a big important thing. And typically you only see one or two of these kind of stakeholders be adopting that technology and seeing value. Like, for example, only Cisco IT would have, normally you think the IT team would see value and the users won't. However, in this case, all three, the users, the Cisco IT, and security teams and executives were very overwhelmingly pleased with the implementation. They found that users were really being able to quickly adopt to this VPN-less experience. They found it amazing to not have to go through a VPN client, and it was very predictable. Whether they're working from a coffee shop or working from home, they could access the same applications through that GNG experience very easily. And so they were happy. They could then self-remediate if they had to. They were told in very clear terms through the Geo technology and our user interface if they needed to self-remediate their device. So it made it really easy and simple. Cisco IT team was really, really pleased because it was a fast rollout. I mean, literally, we were able to adopt 15, 20 applications in a span of 5 months when initially rolled out. And in fact, there were even less than 1% of help desk calls from users needed, which is an impressive number. So that really reduced burden on the help desk. And finally, they could protect a number of applications. We went from about 10, 15 initially to all the way 100 today. And then the security teams, of course, believe that using this as a security model built in through that Geo Beyond and Geo Network Gateway experience really gives them that level of trust that we can have a secure access experience for all users. Here are some of the impressive numbers that came out of this. We have been able to secure over 120,000 devices at Cisco, 100,000 plus users. Now, like I said, 127,000. And then there's very less VPN auths per month now. 410,000 less VPN auths a month is, again, saving that, all that time that's required by users to actually have to VPN. It's just really seamless. And finally, that quick 5-month deployment timeline in 2020 across 98 countries is definitely something of a feat. So we're really happy to share that as a case study. One of the employees actually in our information security team said barriers to entry are so much lower than they used to be with VPN. So it's been quite a journey for Cisco going from the VPN they were used to now the VPN-less, and then now just really being a seamless experience. I encourage you to learn more about Geo Network Gateway. If you are actually a customer already and you want to learn about how to protect now your RDP servers that might be accessed by admins and other users, do check out more information on our website. This is something that we have in public preview right now, so you can take advantage of that. Or if you're a new or recently purchased user, if you're not that familiar, I would really encourage you to go through the Essential Guide to Securing Remote Access to learn more about Duo Beyond and all the capabilities. And finally, if you want to learn more about Cisco's journey, which I gave you a sneak preview of today, talking about user trust, device trust, and application layered access, I encourage you to check out the latest blog from Cisco, as well as a webinar and white paper. At this point, I'm happy to take questions.
Excellent. And it looks like we ran short on time for additional questions, but I do want to thank Seema for all of this helpful information. Thank you to our attendees for joining us today, and please check out the additional resources that are available for download. Have a great day, everybody.
All right. So thanks, everybody. And now we're going to, we do have a poll question for you. We appreciate your feedback on additional resources you'd like to see from Duo Security. You know, it looks like we had a lot of questions that, that we won't be able to get to right here, but we'll get to those. We'll get those questions to Seema and the Duo Security team so they can get back to you. We did hear from Gabrielle, who's already a Duo client. Says it's a great tool, and heard something similar from Chris. As I said, there were some other questions. We will get those onto the team. And thanks to everybody who's already responded to the poll. We appreciate your feedback. I'll just leave it up here for another moment, and then we'll move on to our next presentation. I'd also like to remind you all about the handout section. We've got a PDF there from Duo Security. It's a security outcome study. There's a lot of detail and depth in there, so be sure to check that out if you'd like to learn more. And with that, I want to thank Seema for a great presentation today and for educating us on Duo Security. And let's move on to our next session. So, you know, now it's time for our next presentation here, and the next session is coming from CrowdStrike, and I'm pleased to bring on Vivek Kumar, who's Director of Global, the Director of the Global AWS Alliance. So, Vivek, take it away.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vivek Kumar. I'm going to spend some time with you. And currently, as our moderator said, I lead AWS Alliance for CrowdStrike. I have close to 20 years of experience in global alliances, business development, and ecosystem development. And while we have our time together, right, three things I wanted to highlight. Very first thing I wanted to share is what are the challenges we hear in CrowdStrike from our customers when it comes to hybrid cloud. Then I wanted to give you a very high-level overview of our Falcon platform and how it's helping our customer to solve for their hybrid cloud security challenges. And then I want to leave our discussion with one next step we can take to learn or explore more about our product or offering. And I will highly encourage you, if you have any questions, feel free to chime in the Q&A section. I'm happy to answer them as well. So without further ado, let's get started. So very first thing I wanted to share with you is what are the challenges we see when it comes to hybrid cloud infrastructure. So let's face it, we know this cliche that what you cannot see, you cannot protect, right? So we as a security or IT or engineering professional, we were dealing with it. And then pandemic hit, and now we have to adjust to work from anywhere, paradigm, right? So what it brings as a challenge is lack of visibility of your asset, right? Sometimes you might have unsecured or unauthorized usage of your asset. So that's the very first set of challenges we hear from our customers. The next set of challenges we hear from our customer is, let's accept it, managing the infrastructure in hybrid / multi-cloud is not easy, right? You as a security professional, you need to deal with consistency of security across all your cloud and on-prem infrastructure state. You need to deal with misconfiguration. Along with that, if you're using a SaaS application, you need to worry about that your users and developers are not using insecure API, Other set of challenges we see is while your team is dealing with shadow IT and multi-cloud complexity, the bad guys, they are not sitting idle, right? These bad guys are all the way up to those nation state actor to petty cyber criminal. They have developed or honed their expertise to do the harm. So this runtime threat is very prevalent in our customer environment. And to make the situation even more worse, most of our customers, they report to us or discuss with us is skill shortage. In any organization, team is short-staffed when it comes to cybersecurity. So at the very broad level, these are the 4 challenges, we see at our customer environment when it comes to managing the hybrid cloud infrastructure. Now, let me share with you how CrowdStrike is helping customer to manage their hybrid infrastructure. So if you go to any customer organization or look at your organization, at the very high level, you have 3 types of infrastructure. The very first thing, I will call it in your branch offices or edge location, you have a workstation, laptop, mobile devices which your end user is using. If you are a large enterprises, then you have on-prem your own data center, or you have deployed your infrastructure at the co-location facility. And you are also using those major public cloud, or you have your own private cloud, or you are the user of various SaaS applications. So in a nutshell, these are the at the very high level, the diverse infrastructure you have. So now, to help you solve for the security posture or security issues of all these diverse infrastructure, what we have at the CrowdStrike is, very first thing we have is lightweight agent, which is the white band in this picture. We call it a Falcon platform. It is very lightweight and cloud delivered, right? The way this agent works, the same agent which is working in your user laptop, the same agent will work in your application running with cloud native architecture using container and Kubernetes. So same agent across all your infrastructure. And then we also provide one dashboard which gives you end-to-end visibility of your entire infrastructure estate. And then on the top of it, we have CrowdStrike Threat Graph. Put it simply, it's a brain of our platform. This is industry's most consolidated threat intel, identity, and asset telemetry. And I will spend a little bit more time on this threat graph in the subsequent slide. Then on the top of it, what we have done is, if you need to solve for your on-prem security posture, we have various modules like a EDR. If you need to solve for your malware problem, we have a next-gen antivirus. We have a firewall offering to offer you. If you want to solve for your identity protection, then we have identity threat detection as well. Then if you want to solve for your cloud security challenges, then we have cloud workload protection and cloud security posture management as well. So that gives you the kind of a high-level idea how we go about helping our customer solve for their hybrid security challenges. As I said, our platform is one agent across all your diverse infrastructure with one dashboard giving you end-to-end visibility. Our solution is built-in cloud. It's a cloud native, cloud delivered, so it scales just like you are buying a compute services, let's say EC2 instance from AWS, right? Also, I want to highlight is as you are scaling our platform to your various infrastructure, you don't even need to reboot your existing infrastructure. It just scales like a cloud infrastructure. Another thing I want to highlight, which is very key to protect our customer from these sophisticated attack is we do cloud threat hunting, and we do behavioral detection. So we are trying to be a step ahead of those adversaries and give you the real-time indicators that how it can compromise your infrastructure. And the last but not least, every module of ours is API enabled, and we have worked very hard with a major cloud provider to provide the either API-based or native integration with the cloud services as well. So I hope this gives you the good idea how our platform is helping our customer to solve for their hybrid cloud security issues. Now, I would like to dive deep on our threat graph and two security modules. So as I told you, our CrowdStrike threat graph is the brain of our product, and put it simply, it's the industry's most consolidated database with real-time threat intel, identity data, and asset telemetry. And just to give you a little bit of idea about the volume, every day we are processing more than 1 trillion events, and we are tracking 170 plus adversaries. And these adversaries, right, track from nation state actors all the way up to the cyber criminal. All the data are enriched and processed, and what we do is we provide 3 major outcomes to our customer. Very first thing we do is we help customer with prevent and predict the threats, right, with our actionable insights. Then we also help customer investigate faster of any suspicious activity. And the third one is it's about proactive threat hunting. So if you have your own threat hunter, they have ability to easily search in real time for the subtle signs of those sophisticated attacks. So I hope this gives you the idea how our CrowdStrike threat graph is helping customer prevent and predict any threats. So now let's talk about our cloud security module. So very first module I want to talk about is our Falcon Horizon. This is our cloud security posture management. And here I want to discuss 3 major outcomes which we are driving for our customer. So if you recall, one of the things I discussed in the challenges is what you cannot see, you cannot protect, right? So very first thing Horizon does for you is it provides a continuous discovery and visibility of your cloud state so that you are aware of what's going on, what is protected and what is not protected. So that's the step number 1. We all know misconfiguration is the issue number 1 when it comes to cloud or hybrid cloud security. Gartner states 90% of cloud security breaches are because of customers or user fault, right? So Falcon Horizon not only provides you the visibility and the monitoring of continuous monitoring of your misconfiguration, but also gives you a guided remediation of the misconfiguration as it arises. And the last but not least, every organization needs to have some sort of compliance. It's not only meant for industries who are regulated, right? So Falcon Horizon can help you be compliant with industry level regulation like a PCI, HIPAA, or agency level like NIST, or even the cloud providers, best practices. So we have a very good cloud security posture management, which you can use to ensure that your multi-cloud state does not have any security holes in it, right? From the misconfiguration perspective or from the compliance perspective. Now I want to talk about our Falcon workload protection module. So we understand at CrowdStrike that every IT leader or engineering leader, right, they are transforming to the cloud adopting cloud services, and also delivering the cloud native, architectures to deliver the best outcome to the business, sometimes at the very rapid speed and with the cheaper cost. We want to partner with you to add or augment your security aspect of it. So what this cloud workload protection does is it provides, right, the security aspect in your build time, deploy time, and the runtime. So at the build time, you can integrate this with your CI/CD pipeline, and you can do the image and registry assessment of existing vulnerability, right? It also gives you the visibility into your cloud instances and the workload. At the deploy and the runtime, right, we provide container and Kubernetes protection. We provide real-time threat protection along with behavioral detection using our threat graph. And as I told you, our threat hunting happens in the cloud. There's the cloud-based, threat hunting. So I just wanted to share that if you are using our Falcon Cloud Workload Protection module, you are securing your workload, container, and Kubernetes-based application by shifting left from the design, deploy, and at the runtime as well. Now, as I shared with you this picture that, every organization has a diverse infrastructure in their edge, on-prem, or data center, and the cloud-based. Let's say you have a challenge of skill shortage. You don't have enough cybersecurity professional in your organization. We have a product called Falcon Complete. And what it does is, in the spirit of eating our own dog food, right, we have taken our platform, our threat intel and expertise, and build this offering to provide you the security posture 24/7, 365 a day. And this offering is backed by up to $1 million of breach prevention warranty. We are selling this service for more than 4 years, and I'm very happy to share we have not paid a single penny of warranty on it. So this offering is that much solid and really helping our customer manage their security posture. We have done the Forrester study, and what we have found is our customer generally see more than 400% of ROI, and they get their money back within the 3 months by buying this service, which I think is very powerful for our customer. Another thing I wanted to share with you, when we do the security posture or manage the security posture for our customer, our mantra is 1-10-60. And what it means is, right, our team is so confident that within 1 minute, they will detect of any bad behavior or suspicious behavior in your environment. Within the 10 minutes, they can do the investigation, and within 60 minutes, they can do the remediation as well. To tell you the truth, generally we have seen the remediation time less than 45 minutes, but our mantra is 1-10-60. So I hope this gives you the idea that if you are facing with the skill shortage issue, then we have our managed services called Falcon Complete. Now, as I said, with our offering, right, we are really trusted by our customer. The most demanding organization in the world have asked for our help to provide them the strongest level of defense against, today's highly sophisticated attack. So I just mentioned, how we stand among the various industries. You can see the name of this customer. If you want to learn more of what our customers are saying, I welcome you to visit our website called crowdstrike.com. Now, while we are trusted by our customer, right, we are also respected by the analyst. So we are the #1 when it comes to a Gartner Magic Quadrant and Forrester Wave. So customer trusted and industry, analyst respected. So just to conclude our discussion, as I talked about, if organization is or you are suffering with shadow IT problem, we have a Falcon Horizon product to offer you. If you have a hybrid / multi-cloud, security problem, then our platform itself is a one agent, one dashboard offering to manage your diverse infrastructure, spanning from, on-prem to multi-cloud. If you have a runtime threat issue, then we have Falcon workload protection. If you have a skill shortage, right, we have our managed services called Falcon Complete. You can also take advantage of our APIs and integration work we have done with major cloud providers to, reduce your, skill shortage problem. Now to conclude our discussion, right, I want to leave with you a QR code which provides the, link to our free trial. I really encourage you, please come and try our product, and then you see by yourself how we can help you, protect your hybrid cloud infrastructure. So with that, I will hand it back to our moderator.
Okay, great. Yeah, great presentation, Vivek. Appreciate it. And so, yeah, let's leave that QR code up there for a little bit before we put our poll up, just so you can grab that if you want to get information about that free trial. And let's get into some of the questions. So the first one here, they're asking, do your identity products secure Windows Active Directory and integrate with third-party MFA like Okta, et cetera?
That's right, it does, and we have the integration. The simple answer is yes.
Okay, super. This next question is a good one. With you being the director of the AWS Alliance, it's what are the out-of-the-box AWS service integrations that you have?
Yeah, good one. So right now, as we speak, we integrate close to 20 services, 20 plus services from AWS. And just to give you like a kind of a classification, when it comes to compute, we integrate with EC2, Graviton, right? When it comes to business apps, then we have integration with workspaces. When it comes to security services, then we have integration with Security Hub, Guard Duty. We have integration with System Manager, Control Tower, and also, we have integration with Outpost as well.
Okay. Yeah, I thought you'd have a detailed answer for that one, so you did not disappoint. That was great. Before we get to our next question, I do want to put up the poll. Just this is what additional information you'd like about the CrowdStrike solution. We do appreciate if you can let us know what you'd like to see from CrowdStrike, and I'd also like to mention that there is a handout up there. It's a great solution brief that's up in the handout section of your console. Vivek, this next question comes from Arlene, is asking, have you seen instances of this slowing the machines down? Is there any kind of performance hit from the agents or other?
Arlene, that's a great question, and that's one of our key value proposition is our agent is so lightweight, you have almost zero performance or user experience issue. I can attest you to that.
Okay, great. Next one here, can I orchestrate workflows for handling security alerts with third-party applications like ServiceNow?
Simple answer is yes. Great question. So one thing I did not share is we have call it a application called Fusion, right? And Fusion is nothing but you can go and create a graphical workflow, and then you can integrate with your any SIEM or SOAR tool or ServiceNow type of service management tool you have, and you can get that things done. So yes, we do have, and we give that tool for free if you're buying our platform.
Okay, great. We've got a couple more questions here, and I just want to thank everybody who filled out the poll. I will put the QR code back up just for anybody who wants the free trial while we get to our last couple of questions. This next one is, what are the container platforms that you support?
Yes, so we definitely support all kind of it. The top of my mind, definitely Docker. We have Rocket, so almost every container platform, we support. And if you have any specific needs, just drop us a note and we'll take it from there.
Okay, and then Paul is asking how long installations take.
I will tell you this. Some of our customers have, again, it depends, right? Have done, I don't know, they decide, I will say like a 50 to 100,000 in a given day. So again, it depends, but our installation scales, as I said in the beginning, just like any cloud services will scale. So it's very rapid. I have also heard those, good anecdote evidence from our customer. They kept aside like a month to do all this installation, and they were done in a few days. So it's as simple as that.
Okay, tremendous. Well, Vivek, it looks like that's all the time we have, but thank you so much for this presentation and for your insights on the Q&A and bringing us up to speed on CrowdStrike. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thanks, everyone, and be safe out there. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. And now it's time for our last presentation in the Securing Cloud Environments EcoCast. And our next session comes from Metallic, a Commvault venture. And presenting for Metallic is Indu Pedapatla, who is Senior Director for Product and Strategy. So I will turn things over to Indu.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure being on the webinar today, presenting to this audience. Today, I'm going to talk about data management as a service and its critical role in ransomware recovery. So as I was introduced, I'm Indu Pedipotla, Senior Director, Product Management at Metallic, which is a Commvault SaaS venture. And let's start with the current state of the industry. As we know, ransomware and malicious attacks are challenging IT orgs everywhere. A new attack is happening every 11 seconds. And the costs associated with the downtime as well as the payouts are increasing. And with the increased possibilities of businesses falling victim to a successful breach, now more than ever, it is important to evaluate not only the measures you're putting in place to prevent an attack, but the tools and protocols in place to recover from an attack need to be reviewed and looked at carefully. And with some of the data that we have, half of the cybersecurity professionals believe that they are not prepared for these attacks. So it's very important to assess and review the strategies. With that context, many of the businesses are leveraging the NIST cybersecurity framework, which provides a proactive blueprint for ransomware recovery. At the heart of this framework is data protection, providing businesses with mechanisms and a safety blanket to securely recover data in the face of an attack. The NIST framework covers protect, detect, respond, recover, with identifying as the basis as the framework to be used. And this is important as data protection and recovering from these type of attacks presents the last line of defense and can mitigate the widespread impact of breaches. Now, Metallic data management as a SaaS portfolio is more comprehensive than ever. We offer cloud-to-cloud protection of critical SaaS applications like Office 365, Dynamics 365, and Salesforce. We protect a wide range of hybrid cloud workloads, including VMs, containers, as well as structured and unstructured data, and also offer Metallic cloud storage as a secondary target for these environments. Our endpoint protection secures laptops and desktops, which is more important than ever in today's remote work landscape. With free 80 Active Directory and Microsoft Active Directory backup included with every purchase. And we also, with Metallic, are covered for local, state, and federal agencies, as well as government contractors with our Metallic Government Cloud solutions available across the Metallic portfolio to safeguard your data while meeting FedRAMP's highest security standards. So Metallic unifies data protection and management for all these workloads into one single solution with one single pane of glass management. And it eliminates silos, manages risks, and safeguards data wherever it exists. Protect, detect, and recover form three keys for comprehensive ransomware protection. Protection includes isolating, preserving, and protecting data from ransomware internal malicious attacks. Detection includes tools to spot threats and vulnerabilities early and helping mitigate the impact of breaches. And finally, recovery includes the ability to recover data fast to reduce the downtime and impact on the business. With Metallic, we offer a multi-layered security approach. In Metallic, with its data protection foundations, provides robust controls to both prevent threats and ensure data is highly available and recoverable from deletion or attacks. Metallic backups are in a separate security domain, with both the control plane and the data plane being in a separate domain. And with the source data format also being different, this provides a virtual air gap between customer environments and backup copies and operations. This is very important concept as and when if an organization's environment gets breached or attacked, you're still able to view and see your backup environment, your backup copies, and they're protected and insulated from the attacks. With multi-factor authentication, at-rest in-flight encryption, zero trust access controls baked in, Metallic offers a hardened enterprise-grade security model in the cloud, limiting internal lateral movement, external data loss, and delivering rapid recovery. Metallic also has early threat detection capabilities built in, with warning systems that include anomalous activity with file patterns and other anomalous detection signals that can be flagged as the data is being processed. Our latest innovation, the Metallic Security IQ, delivers new tools and insights that are intended to provide customers with insights to understand their security posture and improve their security posture continuously, get real-time insights into the behaviors and the status of their data environments, and also flag any vulnerabilities and data patterns that we observe. And finally, it provides recovery points to help make informed decisions to exceed SLA objectives and flagging when data copies or recovery points have been cleaned that could be malware infected or not, and be able to recover from those pre-infected recovery points. So Security IQ is a new capability that was recently launched, and this shows a dashboard view of the Security IQ. As you can see on the left, you'll see that on the top left, there's a security posture score that customers can look in and identify if their security controls that the platform provides are enabled or not enabled, and gives recommendations on what to get enabled for those scenarios. On the right, there's also widgets that show the abnormal and anomalous conditions and behaviors that could be drilled down into to understand the current state of the backup environment, and gets you those insights and initial warning signals to contain your attacks. Security IQ dashboard also includes the audit events. This is important to understand who's doing what as a admin or any other user using the tool. And all of these events are captured as part of Security IQ audit events. This is a drill down into the intelligent ransomware recovery dashboard, where once you want to recover certain data, you can drill down into this dashboard and understand where there's some unusual data patterns, and also identify the recovery points that you want to recover your data from. And you know, Metallic has been an industry leader ever since its launch, and we're getting a lot of validation from the industry and our customers, and for multiple of these use cases. You know, we've got from saving money to driving efficiencies to simplifying management. Metallic has been making customers' lives easier while keeping their data secure, and this has resulted in you know, rapid growth for Metallic. And one of the customers recently summed it up by saying, the radical simplicity and unmatched scalability of Metallic is allowing us to completely rethink how we protect our data. So this builds on top of the momentum Metallic is also receiving from our peers, having snagged a number of industry awards just in the 2 years since our launch. And some of them are listed here, but you know, the biggest ratification and validation for us is really from our customers, who are seeing the value of this tool day in and day out, and have been our vocal supporter in our journey to fight ransomware and protect their data and recover the data. We also have a free trial capability with Metallic, and you know, with metallic.io/trial, users can self-sign in and get a trial and start protecting their data. And with that, I'll pause for a Q&A.
Absolutely, yeah. Great presentation. We do have a number of questions for you here, and tons of questions coming in. We appreciate those. I'll go ahead and just start with this one from Leslie, who's asking, can this solution be used for an enterprise versus a single site? Because we have over 80 sites. Could Metallic help there?
Yeah, absolutely. Metallic is a multi-tenant and is a SaaS offering that can provides a single management interface. But in terms of the workloads that it supports, your workloads could be global. We have configurations that allow you to connect to different data sources. So the Metallic was built for scale and for enterprise operability. And a lot of our customers have these kind of diverse regions in which their workloads are situated. So we absolutely can support that.
Excellent. And then here's another good question here. Can Metallic protect me from a ransomware attack? And how does Metallic differentiate from some of its competitors in the market?
Great question. So Metallic is a data protection tool, and what we advocate is a multi-layered defense to protecting against ransomware. There's the prevention tools that front end some of the capabilities around preventing attacks from coming into your network. And where Metallic plays a huge part is in the recovery aspects of it. And we're oftentimes the last line of defense with our customers where they got breached. And Metallic is the data protection tool that they rely on to recover the data safely and securely. So while Metallic also Metallic helps recover the data because of the backup copies that we keep in isolated virtual air-gapped copies that are immune to the data breaches in the customer environments. There's also built-in threat detection capabilities with our anomalous dashboards and events that we can flag that also give customers an early warning signal that reduces. And as we all know, early detection is key to containing the attack. So those are the two aspects that Metallic can absolutely help our customers. And we've been over the past 2 years have protected many customers, and we're often pulled in whenever there's an attack to recover the data.
Excellent. Excellent. Let's see. Here's another good one. They're asking, how big of an organization can Metallic support?
Metallic is built for scale. It's cloud native. We have elasticity built into Metallic. So whether it's a small environment or a large environment, our SaaS platform can scale from gigabytes to like petabytes. We have customers across the board. Fortune 100 customers with large footprints to small businesses. So we can protect the largest environments, and we are architected to scale.
Excellent. And then let's see, how quickly can Metallic detect anomalies in the service?
So our detection is real time because by virtue of our data protection capability, we are constantly looking at the data and seeing the change sets of the data as we back up to meet our backup SLAs. Anytime we see detection, it's real time.
Nice. That's cool. And then here's a good question. Maria is asking about the implementation process. What's that like, and what resources would be key for an implementation?
So SaaS, Metallic is built as a SaaS product with the intent to reduce your footprint for customers and any customization that needs to be done. So it's a very seamless process where customers can log into metallic.io and start configuring their data sets and data sources and start seeing the value of backup. So there's very minimal implementation from a customer's perspective, and that's the beauty of Metallic and the SaaS product offering form factor that we offer it in.
Very nice. And then what about, let's see, they're asking, is there a trial version? I think you talked about that in your final slide there. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as the best-in-class SaaS platform, we do offer trials. So customers can go to metallic.io/trials and self-sign in, and they'll have a period of 30 days to do their trials. And we offer trials for all the workloads that we support. So it's a great way for customers to see the value of Metallic and see how quickly they can configure, get going, and protect their data sets.
Absolutely. And then let's see, here's another good one. They're asking, you mentioned air-gapped backups. Can you tell us a little bit more about what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So Metallic is 100% cloud-native solution. And the key concept there and the way we protect customers' data is the isolation that we provide from both from a control plane and a data plane perspective between customers' environment to where Metallic is operated and stores the data in. So it's in a completely different security domain. What this means is even if a customer's environment is attacked or compromised, the Metallic service is still accessible. The backups are still accessible because they're stored in different locations. And we make it easy for customers to restore back the data. So this key concept of, in some ways, the connection between the source data and where the backup data is located is cut off, and we isolate the data so that only during restores we bring the data back up. So this ensures that the air gap is provided in a virtual air gap with our cloud technologies, and the restores are independent of customer environments. So this isolation of data and service is how Metallic delivers the air gap.
Got it. Okay. Another question here, they're wanting to know, do you have any customer case studies or kind of success stories of other companies that have implemented Metallic?
We have several case studies, and if there's anyone interested, they can reach out to me or the Metallic support team, and we can absolutely provide those case studies. And some of them are available on our website as well.
Excellent. All right. Let's see. There's so many good questions here. What about how does Metallic handle data residency for SaaS app protection?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and there's a lot of with some of the compliance laws coming into play now with GDPR and CCPA in California and so on. The data residency is a first-class citizen as we designed Metallic and architected it. So customers, have the option to choose the location for the data that they want the backups to go to. In addition, Metallic also inherently with its geolocation capabilities can sense the source data and will map the where the data is stored to a region that satisfies the residency laws for that particular geographic region. And by default, Metallic stores multiple copies, but as part of our data residency, we ensure that there's no crossing of boundaries across locations where it violates the localization and residency requirements.
Nice. And then next question, you talked about zero trust. What controls are in place for Metallic around zero trust?
Right. So Metallic, leverages a hardened security model, and zero trust is an integral part of that. And beyond just the buzzword that zero trust involves, Metallic takes this extremely seriously, and we have stringent access controls in place. We have limitations on who can access, and any unauthorized access is not allowed to both not only the data as well as the services that host the data. And the privileges are extremely limited, and there's multi-factor authentication, role-based security, and integration with external domains as well as SAML and SSO support. All of these, along with privacy locks and multiple authorizations required, enables the zero trust controls that we have in place to protect customers' data. And we're also compliant with ISO, SOC 2. We recently got FedRAMP high ready status. All of these are built into Metallic, and the workflow authorizations to allow any action on the data all go into providing that zero trust framework that Metallic has.
Excellent. And I guess one more question just to kind of wrap up again or review again. Back to the trial, Indu, I wanted to ask you, so if folks go to metallic.io/trial, what are the steps that they would take there to try this out for themselves?
Yeah, it's a very simple form that they need to fill and to get them going, and it's very intuitive, and it will be less than 5 minutes to get them going and sign up for the trial. So it's a very self-guided, intuitive process, and they need to enter their contact information and the workloads that they want to protect, and that should help them get going. It's as simple as that.
Excellent. Yeah, it sounds super easy to get started. A great way to protect your data, whether it's on premises or in the cloud. Indu, really great presentation today. Thank you so much for educating us on Metallic.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to present today. It's a pleasure to be here.
And we do have just 2 last poll questions for you before our event ends today and before our final drawing. So in this first one is, where do data management and data protection purchasing decisions fall within your organization? You can see there are 3 options there: IT team led, security team led, or is it a joint collaboration? So if you're able to let us know, it really helps us out to know how you do that. It's great information. So I'll just leave that up for another couple of seconds to let everybody fill it in. And it looks like right now it's you know, leaning heavily on the IT team led and joint collaboration. There are relatively few organizations where the security team is leading data management and data protection purchasing decisions. So I'm going to go ahead and show everybody what those results look like. As you can see, it's almost half. It's a joint collaboration between the teams, and then 41% IT team led and 9% security team led. You know, the fact that security teams don't lead on data management, data protection purchasing decisions, I guess, is not particularly surprising, but it's encouraging that there's the joint collaboration is the leading option there. Okay, interesting results. Thanks to everybody for filling that one out. And then our last poll of the day, and this is about what additional information you'd like about the Metallic solution. And it's our usual selections: data sheet, technical white paper, customer case study, et cetera, et cetera. You're all familiar with the options there. So if you could fill that one out, we'd really appreciate it again. And I'll leave that up there for just another moment before we move on to our final prize drawing. I'd also like to remind you about all of the handouts. We've got a PDF from Metallic. It's about 5 building blocks to hybrid success with Metallic SaaS and Microsoft Azure. So be sure to check that out if you'd like some more detail. And this will also be your final chance to download those handouts from the console from Metallic and all the companies that participated today. So be sure to grab those if there was something that caught your eye, or you thought you were interested in something earlier. This is almost your last chance to grab that out of the handouts console. So thanks to everybody who has responded already to this poll. I'll just leave it up there for another couple of moments. And I'll leave it up there while we do our final prize drawing. So the winner of the third and final $500 Amazon gift card is Brent Runyon from Utah. So congratulations to Brent Runyon, to Cameron Moore, and Blake Monroe for winning gift cards today. We'll be in touch about claiming your prizes. Again, those winners are Brent Runyon, Cameron Moore, and Blake Monroe. And with that, I'd just like to mention that you know, if you enjoyed the content that you heard about today, you'll also really like Actual Tech Media's Guerrilla Guides. You know, there's the Guerrilla Guide book series, and you can join our book club to get the latest releases from the Guerrilla Guide series. You can see 3 of them up here, the kind of topics that we cover: infrastructure as code, backup and recovery, best practices, modern data protection. Those are just some of them. There are literally dozens in the collection, and they're great resources. I'd also like to mention that if you were listening in today and thought that this would be a great platform for something that your company does, please reach out. We'd love to hear from you. If you're interested in being part of a future Megacast or EcoCast, email us at connect@actualtechmedia.com. And finally, just a quick teaser for our event coming up on Thursday, Preventing Phishing Attacks. We'll have 5 vendors back to back, Know Before, Sophos, Recorded Future, Okta, and Duo. So that'll be this Thursday at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. So register now. That's going to be another great event. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I do want to thank all of our presenters today for putting together such great presentations and demos and providing their insights in the Q&A sessions. I want to thank all the companies that made this event possible: Rubrik, Firemon, Gigamon, Sneak, Duo Security, CrowdStrike, and Metallic. And finally, we'd like to thank all of you for attending today's EcoCast and from Actual Tech Media and for all of your great questions. That concludes today's event. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next time.